I'm going to go through a few things just helpful to just kind of frame the business of Maryland. Point out we started in 2010. I'll share, for those of you I have not met, I'll share my background with you. I taught my first test prep class in 1984, so you also don't have to tell me how many negative years old you were at that time. So I've been at this for a long time, and to me it's a calling. It's just about the most awesome thing you can be doing. So I appreciate that all of you are here. Some of you who are just getting started will just spark to it, and it's going to be a thing you're going to want to keep doing even as you move into different phases of your life. Others are going to kind of do it until you move on to something else, but for the time you are here, thank you for being here, and thank you for everything you will do on behalf of our students. Here's our mission: prepare students for their future, help them reach their greatest potential. So one thing I hope you will realize as we do this is, while you are training students to achieve a higher test score, that seems like a kind of a simple task, you're really doing a lot more, even if you don't realize it. Because when you improve a student's score, you help a student kind of unlock the key to improving their performance. You know, the obvious benefit is maybe they get into a different school, maybe they get scholarship dollars, maybe the less obvious benefit, but very real benefit is, and those of you who've been at this for a while, I imagine you have seen it. You change a student's self-perception, they gain self-confidence, they realize what talents they have that are being unlocked. So never underestimate the impact you can have on a student's life through the act of helping them improve through their test score. Just to frame the business a little bit, also in terms of my background, I spent 15 years as a vice president with Kaplan, and at some point realized that commuting from Evergreen, Colorado to Midtown Manhattan was a long way to commute, especially when you had with a couple of children at home growing up. And that's really what led us to start Drive Safe Driving Schools and ultimately College Drive Test Prep. Marilyn alluded to the growth of our business. So there we were back in 2010 with like $25,000 of business. The curriculum was the Red Book. The phone answerer and scheduler was Marilyn, and I was running around teaching, and we've grown pretty rapidly. So from this point here, we've steadily grown, which is very exciting, and now this past year we were a $400,000 business, and this year will be, if all goes according to plan, a $500,000 business servicing somewhere around 1,200, 1,300 students over the next year. So I anticipate there's no reason to think our growth will not continue, and there won't continue to be more and more opportunities for folks like you to continue to join us. Where does College Drive fit within our overall business with the driving school as well? So I don't know how easy you can see the color breakdown here, but you can see most of the revenue of our business continues to be on the driver's education side, but you can kind of see that the tip keeps growing. I think that trend will continue as well. So with each passing year, College Drive, because of its growth, becomes a bigger and bigger piece of our overall business. Some of you may say, well, why is it that I'm scheduled to teach in Denver, but why is it I keep going to Wheat Ridge instead? Or why do I go to these other places? Well, that's because here's the way our business breaks down currently. This will change over time. Our biggest business is in Evergreen, so any of you who are near Evergreen, willing to go to Evergreen, begrudgingly will go to Evergreen. Thank you, because obviously we need you up there. And you can also see the breakdown. So the red, the Sith lightsaber ends, and is taken over at the tip by a Jedi lightsaber, evidently. Well, I don't know what gray is, Jonathan. Is that? I don't know.
Jedi Academy dropout.
Okay. So you can see the red is where we were last year, and then the gray is what added on for 2015. So that kind of gives you a sense of. So very rapid growth in Highlands Ranch. So that suggests lots of teaching opportunities down there moving forward. This is Wheat Ridge. This is Morrison, Westminster, Greenwood Village, Louisville, Southeast Aurora, live online business, small but meaningful, and Denver, which should grow rapidly as well. So if you're wondering, how is it that I keep getting asked to teach somewhere, this kind of drives it. And over time, we hope that all of the lightsabers will be across the screen. Things that happened with us over the last year. I mentioned this one. Every year we apply, compete to be considered a top workplace. Denver Post puts out this thing every year. We compete to be a top workplace. For some of you who are, kind of working part-time and limited hours, it's may not seem that meaningful, but I wanted to mention it because it's something we really strive to do. So whether you are someone just working a few hours intermittently for us every week, or putting in, or all the full-time people that are here, this is something that we really strive to work at. And if you have recommendations for ways we can improve, absolutely we want to hear them. We want to be a great place to work. We want to continue to attract great people who will work for us again, either part-time or full-time. We opened up the Denver Center in the last year, so it's growing very nicely. If you're not familiar with where it is, Colfax and Grape, which is in the Mayfair section, kind of a cool area of Denver near the Bluebird Theater, to give it a frame of reference, out near Denver East High School. Those of you who've been to Highlands Ranch, we opened up a new center there, only about 100 feet from where the old center was, just on the other side of the same building, but we had grown to the point where we need to double the size of the center, so that's what we did, and I got it right side up.
I turned it around.
I turned it around. Showed that picture yesterday at a meeting and it was upside down. Nick was nice enough to point that out. Other things we've done to really, most of our main signage, because the driver's education business started first, so most of our centers have drive safe signs out front. Realized that, well, that's not a good way to promote our college drive business. So if you go to our centers, top left is Westminster, that's Southeast Aurora at the bottom, you'll see more signage, again, promoting what we do inside. Other things we're doing as we grow, this is getting into Greg's area, is figuring out how to do cross promotions between Drive Safe and College Drive. A big source, probably the most abundant source of students for College Drive, well, I'd say there are two places. One comes from the partnerships we have at a lot of the area high schools, and the second will come from our Drive Safe students. So students we teach to drive as freshmen, as 15-year-olds, we hope to see back as 16 and 17-year-olds for their ACT, and as we'll discuss tonight, SAT preparation moving forward. And we also do a lot of events at area high schools, starting to increase the amount we do at local libraries and such. Other marketing things we'll do. If you haven't, if you're not really familiar, because really you just know us as College Drive, I'd encourage you to kind of go to the barroneducation.com website. You can see the different things we do and get a full sense of what the organization does overall. Of note over the last year, and kind of quietly, because it's not something we've discussed that much and haven't done that much with yet, but we created our own learning management system. We built it to house our online driving school, but it creates all kinds of opportunities and what I'd envision into the future, where we can have a lot of online learning resources available to us, practice questions, practice tests that we can give students. So do things that we're not yet able to do. But as we grow, this will become increasingly important. We continue to try to find new things to do that will be helpful to our school partners and overall. Some of you may be familiar with some of the things we're doing at Douglas County High School. We're actually delivering a live online program. So we've taken our 18-hour course, divided it up into 24 45-minute sessions, and are delivering it weekly live into every homeroom at Douglas County High School. It's really been, Jonathan's taught, Marty has been teaching it, I've taught some sessions, and maybe others that who I haven't mentioned as well. It's been very well received. It's something I think we'll be able to expand. Green Mountain High School asked us to develop a career profile because they were no longer giving as the plan test went away, they lost the ability to create career interest profiles for their students. They asked us to develop one, as well as to develop a plan test, which was a mini ACT delivered to their sophomore and freshman students. We just started a TOEFL class. If anyone has interest or experience in teaching for English as a second language, we just, at Lutheran High School in Parker, literally just started a couple weeks ago. So we're always looking to add new things as well. So those of you who have interest or experience in any of these areas, let us know, and we will be more than happy to get you involved in these different things. Then we're always trying to add our partnership schools as well. So as I mentioned, a big source of our students will be places where we go and deliver educational seminars. We give free practice tests. We really do a lot teacher workshops. We do quite a bit as well. So over the past year, we now work with about a dozen different high schools or so, 13 different high schools. And just this past year, we added Wheat Ridge and Devlin and Lutheran. and Golden high schools together. And I just like the Lutheran high school next to the Demons.
Just admire the juxtaposition of those two.
Yeah.
This is nice.
So, things that we're looking to do this year, actually really just a couple slides that actually kind of go in a slightly different direction with this. But, as you were trained, hopefully this was something that you've seen. If you hear me talk about what we do and how we do it, and if you're kind of wondering, hey, am I doing a good job at what I'm doing? It all comes back to this, our credo, the things that matter most to me, and the things that ultimately matter most to our students and our students' families really can be expressed in these terms here. Expert, you've got to know what it is you're teaching. You've got to own the material. There's just no substitute for that because that's what people are paying us to do. Being engaging. While this is exciting material to me, and hopefully to many of you as well, you genuinely enjoy going through the puzzling of the different types of questions. And I know what will happen later this evening as we start going through workshop, we start doing breakout sessions. There's always a lot of excitement and enthusiasm as we show off all of our great ways of teaching problems. But not all students feel that way, so you've got to be engaging. So whether you're working one-on-one with a student or teaching a class, being able to engage the students in material. We're here to help motivate them to do better, to help students gain that belief in themselves that they can do better, and they want to do better, and they understand the benefit of doing better. Young people, well, maybe everybody wants to know that other people care, but I would say that is especially acute with our students as well. So if you're kind of coming just to do it, and you don't really care about the students, that comes through. It does not work really well for us. So being able to communicate that we really do care about the progress of each and every one of our students is very, very important. And understand that we are role models for our students, and the way we interact with them, the way we teach them are things that they are paying close attention to, and they will emulate the way we interact with parents as well. It's very, very important. So if you want to know whether you're doing a good job, you really have to be able to ask yourself, am I fulfilling each of these areas? If you are, probably doing a good job. Probably things you could do to be better. I know for me, after doing this for 30 years, there are plenty of things I can do to get better. And I am very open to the notion that I will learn things tonight that will help me do better as a teacher, as a role model as well. So I encourage even those of you who are experienced at this to have a very open mind about new and different ways of teaching problems, of interacting, and of being improving your skills as a tutor and as a teacher as well. Then the big thing, a lot of our evening tonight, we're going to talk about this notion of winning the test change. In the world of test prep, companies love test changes because it puts the tests on the front page of the newspapers and gets everyone's attention. So test changes, in a sense, are always good. And the way it went down here in Colorado is pretty fascinating. It's really happy to talk about that later if we have time. But just the fact that we're making the switch is there'll be a lot of news, there'll be a lot of noise about it. So even though we're going to go through one more cycle with the ACT for our juniors now, we'll be making that shift to SAT. We'll have more of our juniors will want to take the SAT as well because of the shift. And our ability to really nail it is going to be critically important. Those are my slides. As always, I've gone over by a couple minutes. I apologize for that. And I'm ready to turn it back to our next phase. Is it?
Susan,
it's on you. For me, it's pretty darn good. I don't know, 4 minutes less than you were supposed to.
Hi. Okay, so one thing we wanted to share with you all tonight is, something you guys might not know too much about what we do here with our college admission consulting. Here at Barrier Education, under the academic side, we sort of have 3 parts. And those are 2 of them that you probably know pretty well, and that is the ACT and SAT prep part, the academic tutoring part, and then the 3rd part is the college admission consultant. So that's where we're going to share just a little bit about that with you, just so that you have some knowledge in case you're ever in conversations with students and some topics come up that you might be able to share some of this information with them. So, first of all, I don't know if you can read this. Can you guys see any of this small print here? Yeah. All right, so I can, is that a yes or a no? Can you see? No? Okay, so I'll share with you. I wasn't sure. Okay, so here we have a father and a son. Okay, they're sitting on the couch. And we have, they're just sitting there, and suddenly the son's like, oh my gosh, my ears just popped. What happened? There must be a pressure front that's just moving in. Dad says, I don't feel anything. Oh, there's nothing in the forecast. What happened? And Mom comes in and says, oh my gosh, don't you realize your college application is due in 2 years and you haven't even written your essays yet? Well, that explains it. Okay, I feel it too. All right. So that right there is happening in households all over the place, right? I mean, this kind of pressure that has to do with, oh my God, getting into college, okay? So it's a fact. The college admission process can be stressful for both students and parents. And we at College Drive can help. So what exactly is college consulting? It is the opportunity for a student to work with their own private guidance counselor. College counselors at high schools are busy people. They often have a course load of somewhat like 400 students, and usually their focus is on things like scheduling, things like making sure kids are on track to graduate. They often are letting the A and B students go off on their own. They're usually dealing with the kids who are maybe having some more troubles. They're dealing with personal and behavioral issues. They may not have a lot of time to help kids with getting into college. College consulting is customizable to each student's needs depending upon where they are in the process, whether they're freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, whether they're just trying to figure out their plan of courses and what they're going to take through high school, to whether they're already starting on their essays, whether they're trying to figure out that list of schools to apply to. College consulting is a way to reduce conflict between parents and students by providing an objective third party to work with. This is a big one. I know people who have hired college consultants not because they don't know the process themselves, but because it's stressful in the family, and it's kind of nice to have an objective other person to sort of work with the student and take some of the stress off that conflict between the parent and child. Like in that first slide when mom is about to blow up, she's a tornado, and it can just have somebody else to ask the questions, to provide the reminders. Is that essay done? Are you working on that application? And it's an option for families to help take the stress off with their college planning, their search, their application in the hands of an expert. So we have an expert here. Oh, it's an investment in the future. Okay. And we have an expert here at College Drive, Karen Donahue. And if you ever have the privilege, I don't know if you will, but we've had the privilege of sitting down with her in a room, and in 5 minutes you're sold and you actually want to be back in high school and working with her, because she knows what she's doing and she is 100% knowledgeable. She will win you over. She's just great at what she does, and she breathes college admissions. She's a great resource. We're lucky to have her. So what do we offer here at College Drive? We offer comprehensive college prep packages for freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Freshmen, for example, might be trying to chart the courses that they are going to take through high school, planning ahead so that they have a good college-bound course load. They might be thinking about, freshmen, sophomores might be thinking about the activities that they're going to be taking through high school, things that might put them in a good stead for their college applications. Going back, juniors and seniors are obviously more well into the process. They might be making that college list, figuring out where to apply. Seniors obviously are going to be deep into that application process. They're they're doing their research, they're writing their applications, they're writing their essays, they're figuring out who's going to be writing their recommendation letters. All of those nuts and bolts. We provide assistance with college applications. We don't write them for kids, but we can be that objective third party who can read it as an admissions officer would, because a parent was like, oh yeah, this is great. This essay is perfect. This is wonderful. And, the admission office might have read that same essay 100 times, but the parent wouldn't know that. But we can give some more objective advice and help the kid, put on paper the ways that they're special in a way that is maybe a little bit more, how would you say it? Compelling, yes. We do essay reviews. Again, we don't write essays for kids, but again, we can be that objective third party and help them write their position a little bit more compellingly, how to put on paper some of the things that kids might have trouble putting on paper. And then we also offer scholarship planning and FAFSA assistance. This isn't Karen, we have another expert in-house for this, but sometimes that FAFSA can be a stressful thing for families, the financial aid forms and scholarship planning. So who benefits from college consulting? Of course, anyone who has an interest in it. The student who seems especially lost, somebody who's like, I don't even know where to start, this is so stressful, like, I don't even know where to begin in this college planning process. The parent who seems especially anxious, and you might have had some contact with some of those parents. Has anybody had contact with those parents who seem especially anxious? I thought so. And the student who is looking at elite schools, you know, the Dartmouth, the Harvards, the Stanfords, okay. Karen shared a statistic with me that 1 in 4 students who are applying to the elite schools, and we're talking the schools that have acceptance rates of below 10%. These are 5% acceptance rates, 7% acceptance rates. These 1 in 4 of those students are using college consultants, and I don't know, Ben, you were thinking on the coast it might be more like 8 in 10 students are using college consultants. You know, again, it's really just a matter of, you know, these are students who are already at the top of the game. They already have the 4.0s. They already have the 34 ACTs. They already have, you know, an extraordinary list of accomplishments, but how do they put themselves on paper in a way that's going to help them to stand out? So, you know, these are the kinds of things that we can certainly help students with. And our goal is really to help to take students and their families from a place where they're like this to a place where they're like this when they get that admission acceptance letter from the colleges that they're interested in. So we bring this up because you guys are in the unique space of working directly with kids, and you know sometimes you're having those conversations with kids. Oh, tell me about your college plans. You know, how's it going? You know, you might be in those conversations with families, and if you ever have somebody who seems like that might be something that would benefit them, you can just say, hey, you know that we offer college consulting if that's something that you might be interested in, just so that you're aware of that service that we provide. So we just wanted to share that with you today. What questions do you have?
Oh, first question was, how long is it between the time that, say, a student signs up for college counseling in, say, their junior year? I would imagine that's the most, I guess my first question is, what's the most common age for them to want to be in college counseling? Do you know yet?
Historically?
It really does, unsatisfying answer, but it really does vary. So we'll have some families who want to start at the freshman level and get help with course selection and thinking through activities and having a real plan. Some as late as senior year just want help with a couple pieces, you know, maybe college selection, maybe just the essays as well. Junior year is probably the sweet spot because that's when everyone turns their attention to it.
Right.
But we've seen it across the board.
Mine was less of a question, more just like a general comment, just coming from the driving school side. After I'm done getting driver's tested, people, a lot of our drive safe employees are pushing this as much as they can to get help with academics, to get help with admissions, because like Ben said, right at that sweet spot, sophomore, junior year, they're getting that license permit, so they're they like getting that offered help and saying, look, we're here for you too. It's not just get your stuff and go. We're here for you throughout the whole part of your academics.
And what colleges are looking for are changing at this point. And one of the things that Karen talked about when I spoke with her was colleges are now looking to see who is a true applicant. So they're now seeing whether or not you're opening their emails and deciding whether they're going to accept you. So like an admissions counselor helps you see these things and be like, you need to be opening these emails so that they know that you really want to get into their school.
I guess it's not as important, but I just wondered why School of Mines wasn't up there.
You said a lead.
Ouch.
That's true. Good point, yes, for all the School of Mines folks in the room. Very cool.
Yeah. Also recognize that, I will say that on Greg's behalf in the back, we're putting together a postcard that we'll send out for College Drive, and one of the schools on that postcard that talks about places where our students have been admitted is Colorado School of Mines. So you're not here, but you'll be out in front of 25,000 people in another few weeks. And also not lost on us is the fact that for many of you, you were the students to whom Susan is alluding just a couple of years ago. So your ability to interact, some of us are kind of old, so interact kind of like a parent would, or the old people. Some are kind of in the middle. And some of you, are still students and went through this process yourself just a couple of years ago. So the students are hanging on the words that you provide, the wisdom that you provide. Don't think they're not listening, because they are. You represent where they hope to be.
Sam and you.
Oh, okay. Do it.
This is David Bowie, by the way.
You're not going to perform the song for us?
Not this time, but we did want to use his image. A huge David Bowie fan, and there are going to be changes. So we wanted to make sure he was here to let you know about it. Okay, so is it time?
Is that?
That's it. So College Drive is going to be experiencing a few little changes here and there, but mainly to do with the tutor matching and scheduling process. And at this point, I think you've got used to it a certain way, us texting you, but we thought maybe that could use a little bit of improvement. So our goals in revising this were to make it easy for tutors who want to take on more students able to do so. So some of you at this point have told us, hey, I really want more work, what can you get me? And we've been hearing you, and so we wanted to develop something that made it a little bit easier for us to do that. We also wanted to make something, a predictable way for you to expect to hear about more students potentially. And we wanted to make sure that you were matched with students in a timely manner.
So the old way. We would send you random text messages or emails just asking you if you could take on a student, maybe at a time you couldn't respond right away. Use your clicking. We could ask you about students whom you can't take because of other conflicts. And we would be here messaging one person at a time until we would get a yes, which sometimes would take days. The new way.
So, every weekday morning at this point, you're going to receive an email titled College Drive New Tutoring Opportunities. It's going to have a nice little exclamation point at the end of it, so you feel like really special when you receive it. And we're also going to send a text message out with that too, just letting you know, hey, you have an email. The tutoring opportunities will be divided by location. They're going to be color-coded. So you're going to have the name of the student along with what type of tutoring it will be, whether ACT, SAT, or academic, the number of sessions the student is signed up for, a general idea of their availability, and any other notes about the student. For example, if on March the 29th they're not free, or if these sessions are 1 hour in length or some other special note.
So this is perhaps hard to see, but this is an example email. Hello, College Drive tutors. There are new tutoring opportunities available. And there's going to be a list of the available opportunities for you in that email, color-coded, so you can kind of see, hard to see, but Evergreen, Greenwood Village, and so on, based on the location. And you can see the student that's available, and as Sam said before, a little bit about what kind of tutoring it is, the student's availability, so you'll be able to see, hey, that's somebody that I could probably take. or somebody that I would not be able to take it. You'll be able to see that at a glance with an email every morning rather than waiting for random text messages wondering when we're going to contact you. Oh, I'm seeing thumbs up. This is good. Okay, next one.
All right, so Susan and I sat down for about 11 or 12 minutes deciding what colors these were going to be. I think that we landed on some pretty good ones. We were afraid of yellow, but that one seems to show up pretty well, so I'm feeling good about it.
Anyway, and if there's, by the way, if the center isn't on there that day, that's because there wasn't anything that day. Okay, so you'll see that some are showing up more than others. Evergreen is probably going to show up every single day because we're getting a lot of people in Evergreen. Denver, maybe not so much because it's just going to reflect the market that we have. Okay.
So does this mean we don't have to submit blue time anymore?
Good question. We still want you to submit blue time until further notice. We're refining the system. And the reason is going to be that we are still going to be scheduling first sessions, and we'll explain what that means, which is still going to have us to have to know about your availability. So, good question until further notice. Yes.
So,
Okay. Is this you or me, Sam?
I think it's me.
Okay,
It can
go.
be me.
Go ahead.
Okay, so you're just gonna reply to our email saying which students you can take on. You can order them. This one's my first choice. This one's my next choice. How many of the new students you're willing to take on? You might say I can do this one, or this one, but only one this time. And then just a general idea of your availability. Again, you will get their availability at the same time, and you can write back and say, I can do their Wednesday times, or I can do their Saturday and Sunday times. So the emails we get by 2 p.m. will be given preference. So in case it wasn't clear at this point, these emails are going out to everyone at a time, so we can make sure that these students are getting filled.
And that's kind of the same half day. We have the half day. We want to hear from you within a half day. These are going out in the morning. 2 o'clock is still a half day. Those are preference. Okay, here's an example tutor response. Okay, so this email is coming out from scheduling in College Drive. And you can write back, hey, I can take Anna Cohen or Sarah Bowman. Anna's my first choice. Sarah's my second choice. I can only do one student this time. I'm available Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday after 4 o'clock to meet with one of them. Thank you. Okay, just a quick note back letting us know who you can take. Okay, so our goal is to make this more predictable, make it easier for you to see who's available. You can see their availability, and we're not doing this texting back and forth thing that might be driving you crazy. Yes.
Are you wanting a response regardless of whether or not those tutoring opportunities that you send out? Matt, do you only want us to respond if you want the tutoring opportunity?
Sure.
Yes.
Or do you want us to respond every single time? Like,
No. If you can take someone.
Okay, all right.
But we do want you to see it every day. Yes.
Just to clarify the before 2 p.m. thing, like within that window, is it who responds first, or is it just like everything and then you'll consider what works out?
Everything.
Everything.
Have you ever read Lord of the Flies?
You don't have to rush to beat everyone out, it comes out at 8.
No.
As long as you respond by 2.
No. Well, no, that's preference.
Right.
That's preference.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
So anyway, you'll receive a response from us in 24 hours. Okay, this will be your person. Okay?
Oops. I can't run this thing. I don't know how to do it.
No, you can go backwards.
2 buttons.
Okay.
You can go backwards like that.
No, it's like magic.
Yeah. Okay. So again, we're trying to make this easier on you guys. I think you're gonna like this. Okay, you'll receive a response from us within 24 hours. If we were able to match you with a student, we'll let you know, and we'll go about scheduling your first session. Okay. If we were not able to match you with a student, we will also let you know and keep you in mind for next time. We will continue to contact you directly to ask about tutoring students who we were unable to match through this method. Okay, so if we aren't able to find a match with one of you responding to us, then we're going to go back to asking you individually, but we're hoping not to have to do that. Yes.
Want us to give like a special subject so they're easy to sit through? Because I feel like it'd be like a lot of replies.
Well, it's going to be a reply, new tutoring opportunities available. We'll see it.
We'll still see your name.
We'll see it. Yeah.
And it's
That's a good.
It's a special email address too, right? It's not just coming from Susan at College Drive. You've got that.
It's coming from scheduling at College Drive.
Anyone else like to reply directly to the email or create a message to schedule?
Reply
Reply
directly to the email.
You're good.
Reply directly to the email.
Not reply.
You can be lazy.
Oh.
Yes.
Please, no.
Did you have a question, Marty?
Yeah, perhaps in the subject line, it could be the original date that chain sent out, because you would start to have multiple chains.
You're right.
I could see.
That's a very good point, so let's take a note of that. And I think we said that once when we were in our discussion, that we would put the date in that subject line.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Remember, put that in there.
I will remember.
Okay. Okay. All right. Caveats. Sam, this is you.
Okay. We're still going to be looking for the best match, as good a match as possible. So, if we hear something about, someone wants calculus, BC tutoring, we are going to be looking for someone who has done that before, if we can. Every now and then we do get special requests for people, so we're going to be paying special attention. Likely not going to put that one in the blast email, we'll probably go directly to you. And as we said before, it's not necessarily who's sitting at their computer waiting to reply immediately. As long as you, what's that?
Is this for academic tutoring in addition to ACT and SAT?
It
all
is.
going to be done the same
All
way?
yeah.
Just making
And
sure.
it'll be in that first, new tutoring opportunities.
And
It'll
what
say
they're
what
being
kind of
considered for.
tutoring it is.
Okay, I just wanted to
Exactly.
verify.
So you'll get a chip. This will be a great way for you to see what tutoring is available and what's happening. Yeah. And then you could be like, oh my gosh, I would love to teach that. And I would be happy to go there.
I've never seen that before, but
Yeah.
I'd love to teach
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Some
Always wanted to
advantages
learn
of
calculus.
this method. Remember experts? That was like at the top of that list. We're still wanting experts. Okay. Some advantages. Okay, you'll be able to tell us how active you want to be. Some of you will be, like, okay, I can take this one, I can take this one, and for a little while. You might fill up, right? And then, other folks will be starting to take more and more. And, it'll be a way for you to let us know how active you want to be, how many students you want. I know some of you have been vocal already telling me I want as much work as possible. It's a way for you to do that. This will be a way for you to find out who to tutor more predictably. Sorry, that was a very weird sentence, but the way you hear about students will be much more predictable. Wow. And you'll be much more likely to be matched in a more timely manner. How many of you, I'm thinking about like Marty. Okay, it's been days since he said, sure, I can take this student, and it can be frustrating to wonder, do I have to keep this open or not? And we're hoping that this is going to streamline the process and make it faster. You guys should know that we still have that process of, sending this back to the parent and sometimes the parents are a little bit slow, and then we have to kind of get back to them, like, was that okay? Have you had a chance to look at this? So sometimes that's where the hang-up is, but overall, we're thinking that this is going to streamline it and make it a lot faster, which is going to be better customer service for the families. It's going to be better for you guys. I think it's going to be better for our team in the office too. So all of us. All right, part 2. How? New intro to scheduling. Sam. Oh, scenario 1. All right.
This is College Drive Theater.
College Drive Theater. This is where we need a script and some props.
Fantastic.
Okay, Marilyn, you're on. Ring, ring. Ring, ring. Thank you for calling College Drive Test Prep and Tutoring. This is Susan speaking.
Hi, I'm calling about the proposed tutoring schedule you sent for my son, Nathan Smith.
Yes?
Well, the Thursdays look good except the week of March 7th. Nathan can't meet on the 10th. Could you do tutoring on Tuesday that week?
Oh, well, I can certainly check with the tutor and see if we can make that change for you. Hello, Sam. The student at Evergreen who can meet on Thursdays from 5:30 to 7 can't meet on March 10th, can you meet on Tuesday on March 8th instead that week? Your blue times look free.
I'm in class, Susan. I can't meet on Tuesday the 8th. I could meet on Monday the 7th, autocorrect, after my other students starting at 7.
Great, I'll let the parent know. Ring, ring, ring.
Hello?
Hello, Mrs. Smith. This is Susan Zananti from College Drive Test Prep and Tutoring. I just wanted to get back to you about your son Nathan's schedule, and I just wanted to let you know that his tutor will not be able to meet on Tuesday, March 8th, but can definitely meet on Monday, March 7th from 7 to 8:30. Will that work for you?
No. That definitely will not work. 7 to 8:30, just too late. Oh my goodness, my baby has to go to bed. What if we did something over the weekend? Could we schedule something Saturday morning?
Well, I can definitely check on that. I'd be happy to let you know. I will find out and I'll give you a call back. How about that? All right, I'll talk to you soon. Hi, Sam. That Evergreen student says that they can't meet on Monday from 7 to 8:30 because it's just too late, but wants to know if you could meet on the weekend on Saturday morning instead.
Sorry, I'm gonna be on the b-ball court with my bros.
Okay, can you give me another option?
The schooling of the bros will be over by Sunday afternoon.
Great. Okay, I'll let the parent know. And you can see where this is going. And then you take this conversation and times it by all of you in the room.
And all of you not in the room.
All right, and some of you not in the room. Okay, scenario 2.
Hello, this is Sam from College Drive Test Prep and Tutoring. I'm a very charismatic tutor, and I'm just calling to introduce myself. It was probably hard to hear me.
Who's on speakerphone?
Yeah, that's good. Calling to introduce myself, I will be Nathan's ACT tutor.
Oh, and after a few moments.
So our first session is scheduled for Thursday, February the 18th from 5:30 to 7. Does that time slot work well continuing forward?
You know, you sound awfully young. Yes, except for March 10th. Nathan can't meet because he has another commitment. Could we do Tuesday that week instead?
I can't meet on Tuesday the 8th. I'll take that young thing as a compliment there. But I could meet on Monday the 7th starting at 7.
No, that won't work. 7 to 8:30 is just too late. My baby has to go to bed. What if we did something over the weekend? Could we schedule something on Saturday morning?
Sorry, I'll be schooling my bros on the b-ball court. But I could do Sunday after 2.
That'll work.
Great.
All right. So what changed? What changed there? Direct contact. Yeah. All right. And that first scenario, I mean, this you guys know this conversation takes place over hours or over, it gets dragged out. So this is a much more streamlined way to do it. You're going to be really in control over a much more streamlined method of scheduling. So let's go over what's happening.
So we had some goals in mind for revising this process. We wanted to improve the response time for scheduling sessions in the same way for matching with tutors. And we wanted to reduce the amount of back and forth during the scheduling process.
The old way. Scheduling every tutoring session at once from the main office. Using a middle person, man-woman person, to go back and forth between the parent and the tutor to decide on dates and times. And having an ongoing conversation, sometimes over several hours, or even dragged out over several days.
Okay, so we are going to match you with a student and schedule your first session for you. You will be calling the parent within 24 hours to introduce yourself and hopefully schedule as many subsequent sessions as possible. Once you get off the phone, you just schedule it in the system real quick. And sometimes you may encounter some situations where they're not going to know their schedule all the way out, especially if you've got like 10 tutoring sessions that go on through March and they may not know yet. So at that point, you just make a note to follow up.
Sam?
Yeah.
Why was that picture on that slide?
Because the other one had like an old cheese thing,
Oh,
and then now I love cheese.
okay.
Yeah.
It's a cleaner cheese.
Okay. There we go. I got it figured
More
out.
refined.
Okay, I'm trying to do this now.
Okay.
Okay.
So the advantage is, remember, you were having these conversations anyway, it's just that you were having these through us. So now you're just having these conversations direct with the family. Scheduling can take place in one call instead of over several text messages and emails with us. You have more control over your own schedule, okay? Which means that you don't have to be waiting for days wondering if these sessions are coming through or not. You also can be in control over back-to-back scheduling. So, I mean, if you're wanting to say, hey, I would love to drive to Evergreen, but it'd be better if I had 2 students up there in a row, that would be much better. That's something that you guys can have some control over and try to work out with families and be looking at availability in those first emails, to see if that's going to work out.
And just to expand on that
Yeah.
real quick, we may text you about something and, say 1 to 5 may work, and you may say that works great, but really what you're thinking is, I really would like it to be a 3:30 to 5 slot. So when you may not communicate to that, that to us because you're wanting to be accommodating, but now if you're talking directly to the parent, that's the first thing you can recommend to them is a slot that works best for you.
Mm-hmm. And you can claim the time that you spend on scheduling on your timesheet, and you should. And we'll be talking about that, but it will be at your tutoring rate. Okay. So the parent phone call.
All right, so you were already doing this. You're calling the parents and say, hey, I'm Jonathan. I'm a great tutor. So tell me a little bit about your student. So you're already doing that anyway. So if you just add a few minutes onto the phone call, it's very likely that you can go ahead and get these sessions scheduled. It would obviously be very helpful to have your calendar with you at that time. And also the College Drive database pulled up. There's a view in there where you can actually look at your monthly schedule to make sure you're not double booking yourself for something.
Have you guys seen that in the database that just says monthly view on there? You can click on it and it shows all the dates that you're already scheduled in there for. And it's a way for you to see everything in a glance, which is real helpful.
So when you're on the phone, just have a notebook in front of you, write down the dates and times you agree on. And then once you get off the phone, I guess it's the same sort of issue. Okay, thanks. You can enter them into the system like right as you get off the phone. Pretty cool. And again, if you can't schedule every session in the first phone call, that's fine. Just use little notes to remind yourself that you have more sessions to schedule. Every now and then, they're not going to answer. Leave a message, give them your number, ask them to call back, and try again in 24 hours.
So, in your packets, you have a document called the parent phone call, which is just a cheat sheet.
Right-hand side.
Yeah, right, what is it, right-hand side?
Right-hand side, second page.
Okay.
Third page.
Yeah, once you've done this a couple times, it'll probably be second nature, but it's just a way to help you through it the first couple of times, or more if you need it. So it's just a way to support you in changing over to this way of doing it. New document. And we're going to teach you how to add a schedule to the database, which is really pretty straightforward. All right?
So after you decide on the schedule with the parent, you're just going to log in to collegedrive.com/siteadmin the same way you do to enter the notes in and mark sessions as complete and enter your blue times. It's really not that hard. It takes 5 steps. And if you run into trouble, we're always here to help out. We're happy to do so. So step 1, click that. This looks familiar.
Tutoring schedule. Yep. Step 2, click 3 other things.
So as you can see over there on the left side, select the location where you're going to be tutoring. Then you will select yourself on this select tutor part and then click add schedule. So here's the add schedule page. A through G there are the steps you're going to have to do in this particular one.
This is where we might want to go to the laser. How do you do the laser point?
Button right on top of it.
Yeah, that's button.
Okay, Sam, there's a laser pointer.
Don't point in your eyes.
Oh, that's so cool.
Now
Okay,
we're getting high tech.
so, okay. So A, you just select your name. Select where the session will occur in the center. So you'll see like classroom as an option. You'll see like tutoring room.
Tutoring room 1, tutoring room 2.
Bathroom.
No. It depends on the center. So it's tailored to the center where you are. Highlands Ranch has lots of options because it's a large center. Wheat Ridge is a very small center and it has the classroom and the front desk area. So, pretty small.
So there are going to be a lot of options that you'll see in this drop-down menu, but the only ones you have to worry about are, is it 90 minutes or 60 minutes? And even if it is academic tutoring, it'll say 60 minutes academic, 90 minutes academic. Just select the regular 60 or 90 minutes. And then select the student's name. Then you'll just hit the start and end times. You want to make sure that that actually adds up to the amount of time you will be tutoring. You'll just select the date in this calendar thing here. You just click a checkbox. And then schedule session at 5.
And before you move over, you can, if all of your sessions are at the same time of day, like let's say they're all Wednesdays from 5 to 6:30, you can go through and do all those checks, for all those Wednesdays at once. But we have to know that if for some reason a room isn't available or something like that, you'll get a warning, and we're going to go over that. So we're going to recommend that the easiest way, you can try it doing all the dates, but if you get any sort of warning, just go back and do them one at a time, and then you might just have to pick a different classroom for one of the dates. It'll just tell you, oh, this classroom is already being used, and then you just pick the other classroom, pick the other room.
So step 4 is just arrive here after you click that schedule session. And then step 5 is send us a quick email. Hey Susan, LOL. I scheduled Caleb Eagle, LOL. Because that's how
I think that would be unprofessional.
Yeah.
So, quick word about warnings.
Yeah, every now and then you'll encounter a warning, and I mentioned that, which all it means is maybe the room that you tried to select is already booked. It'll say, hey, room is already booked at this time, so you'll select another room. All right. Maybe you accidentally picked 60 minutes when it was a 90-minute session, and we'll warn you about that. Maybe you picked a start time or an end time that was before your start time. It'll warn you about that. So, those are just some things to be aware of, and it's one of those things that if you run into that and, it's you need help with, we can help you, or, after the first couple of times of doing it, you'll be like pros at it. And this process will take you probably 10 minutes, really once you've done this a couple of times once you're used to it. Yes?
I'm just wondering, if you run into a warning, does that prevent you from actually scheduling the sessions? Or will you get the warning and have to unschedule the sessions?
You wouldn't have to unschedule. It
Okay.
would stop you from that. And that's sort of the issue with the date range thing. So if you selected 4 and then there was only an issue with one of those days, it'll stop you from scheduling the rest. You have to go back through, which is why it might be a good idea just to do one at a time.
So we have given you in the packets a handy guide to this so that you can take that home. And you know, again, it's just a resource for you, and it'll give you a way to, you know, the first times you go through it on how to do it. Again, I think, you know, the first time or two it might seem, you know, like, oh, okay, I gotta read through everything, you know, step by step, but once you've done it a couple times, it'll be second nature, and it really won't take you very long at all, probably 10 minutes or less even, once you've gotten used to it. All right, the importance of putting times in the system. These are really, 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 I can't even put enough reallys important. Okay, all right, Sam.
So parents, every now and then, they like to check that parent portal on the collegedrive.com website just to make sure, when's the next tutoring session? So they are able to see that through the portal. If they're not scheduled in the system, they can't see that. The other thing is you've been getting reminder emails from us because we can see when your sessions are scheduled. So we like to send those out a week before and then 2 days before. So if they're not in there, then you don't get those reminder emails.
And the students don't get those reminder emails either, so it relies on you to have those in there, for them to get their reminders.
We can know when you're booked, so you don't get double booked. And you can know when rooms are already filled. So if you schedule a session with someone and you don't put it in the system, you may not realize that the rooms at that particular center are filled up at that time. Then you show up and you have to tutor out of the bathroom like Jonathan. So
I've never actually done that.
Right. And by the way, going back to we know when tutors are booked, you know when you're booked too. Because remember how I said, oh, there's that monthly view, and you'll see that now if you haven't noticed this before, you'll now know to look for it. There's a little thing on your portal database thing. It says monthly view. If you click on it, it tells you when all your sessions are. If you ever wanted to see it all in one place, if you haven't put it in the system, it's not going to show up. So it's another reason to have, it has all your schedule in one place, which is handy.
Not sure if the monthly view is like this or not, but is it based off of the center? So if you're viewing your scheduled time out of Highlands Ranch, is that what you're seeing on the monthly view, or you just get all locations?
All of it, but it tells you the location
Okay.
that it is. It tells you the location and it tells you the date and the time.
Because we've been bitten by that before. I have so much time and everything. You've got all these tutors out of Highlands Ranch.
Yep. Okay.
And you also get paid when the sessions you put on your timesheet match the database. How are we supposed to know when a tutoring session has or hasn't occurred unless it's in there? Here's another new document. You've probably seen the flow charts before. I put this one together. The other one had like diamond shapes on it, but I didn't include any of those on mine. Uncreative.
You're a real square, Sam.
But yeah, this just basically walks you through the entire process, starting with what we talked about before with the tutor matching, includes the email, and it just goes all the way through to you scheduling the sessions, and finally to you actually doing the sessions. It just shows you the entire process and overview of it.
All right. So what questions do you have? Ooh, lots of questions. I'll start with Sam.
So just a couple of questions. Sometimes it's real convenient, like they're looking for schedules Thursday nights, and I'm open Thursday nights, and more than half the time it's just always at the same time, 4 weeks in a row.
Yes.
Will you still schedule those if it's something that's obviously?
No, but here's how it can be handled. We would schedule that first session, and that communication still happens. Like Sam, is that going to work the first session? But kind of the way we've been doing it before that, we schedule that first session to help make that communication between you and the parent and the student, and then you as the tutor can say, so we're meeting at on whatever Mondays at 5:30. Is this going to work? Can we continue at the same date and at the same time?
I guess something that's happened before, and this just happened when I was trying to schedule someone with Sam, was the first 2 weeks worked out fine, but we figured out between our two schedules that there was no way we'd be able to get those last two scheduled before their test date, and I know we don't like splitting up tutors,
Oh, okay.
anything like that.
So if you encountered that situation where we match you with a student and you realize this isn't going to work out, you just let us know and we'll find another tutor. That won't be a big deal.
And I guess my other question, as a college student, I don't really have regular business hours that I can be making phone calls. Like I know on a Wednesday, if I make a phone call at noon and they don't immediately answer, I'm in class 1 to 9 basically with different activities. I mean, I've had that happen before when I make my regular phone calls that sometimes I'll just say, you know, if you don't need anything or if you don't have anything you want to talk about, then I'll just see you, you know, at a certain time because I know that I'm not going to be able to talk to them until, 9 that night or won't be able to the next day.
Well, then that's a good point. The alternative can be to schedule the remaining sessions at your first session. Ask the student to bring their calendar, and you bring your calendar, and then you can schedule out from that first session.
And can I say, as someone who was also a full-time college student in most of my time with College Drive, this was our system 3 years ago. And a lot of people in this room back me up on this. It's not the easiest thing in the world to find time to make those calls, but the time does exist. Especially if you have to say with the parent right off the bat, if they sound like they're going to be very, very talkative. It's okay to say, I think, I don't have a ton of time, but let's get this scheduled. Hopefully set those terms. But even if it has to be out that 24-hour window, there are complications there, but it works. I can attest to that. I did this for, at least a year when I started out here. So.
Do you feel like your question was answered, Sam?
Yeah, I think so. Part of it will just be
Seeing how it works, and then if you have questions or something like, well, I still am wondering how about this, let us know.
I just think sometimes, when you call the parents, they kind of think of us tutors as being, it should be the same as a business, and if it's between 8 and 5 and they call, that you should answer or return their call immediately.
Right.
Well,
and you can, in that first phone call, hi, this is Sam, I'm from College Drive, I'm going to be so-and-so's tutor, I just wanted to touch base with you and introduce myself. I'll be working with so-and-so, and I'd love to connect with you. I'm in class for the rest of the day, but I have some time tomorrow between blah, 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 and just wanted to confirm with you, our first session is whatever, you can say some of that maybe in your first message. And then if it turns out that you have to schedule some of those sessions at your first meeting with a student, that could be a possibility as well.
I think parents are very understanding, in my experience, of those sorts of things. Not 100% of the time.
Just a quick, even if this is a possibility, so I'm writing a whole bunch of things out, brainstorming logistics, but obviously the preference is to make phone contact and physically just speak with the parents. For some of those parents that might show that preference of how to be contacted, is there a way that when they first contact you guys at College Drive when they're calling the centers, if they prefer that phone contact or if text is okay? Because I know a lot of times people are very tech savvy now. They'll text until the cows come home. So my wife does it all the time, scheduling her stuff with all kinds of people. And I'm just wondering, via text, exactly. So I'm just wondering if there are other communication outlets that are a little bit more readily available, not so much like, as not to get intimate, but like when you're on the, on the can, just checking your emails, like, oh, okay, I can respond to this, right? But not necessarily call them from the laboratory. But.
Right. Well, no, that's a great question, and for some of you, you may have noticed. If you have taken students very recently and you've looked in the notes that we have a new form that we've sent out called it's a type form, it's a new tutoring intake form, and you may have seen a long thing of notes about a student. But anyway, that could potentially be something that we send out, saying, would you be okay? I don't know. I could think about it, but communicating with a tutor by a phone.
Yeah.
Check all that apply, B, text,
yeah.
email.
As far as professionalism,
and then a tutor can look in there and see the ways that a parent might be okay.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question. Yes, and I know Marty and Derek had some questions as well, and I know there's some others in the room that you had your hands up early.
Yeah.
Marty.
Well, just on that kind of same note, and because I was same as Jonathan, we were here before we switched to like the pure blue time office side, and since we're kind of going back or finding the best one. But one thing you can do when you send that initial call is set up those expectations. Say I'm a student, I'm not around. Then I always give them my cell phone number and then my email that I use all the time. And then if you have to leave a voicemail, it's always good to follow up with an email. So then a lot of times the parents will just jump on email, and people understand with email that you're not going to answer right away. And then the other thing that was previously in a few years back was we always gave the email address or the office phone number as kind of like a fallback. It'd be if I'm unavailable and it's very important that you speak with somebody, you can contact the office just so that they do have somebody and they're not feeling and then I did have a question.
Yes.
So we get that, you've been connected with a student email. Are we still going to get that?
Yeah.
Okay. And
You
it'll
will.
just say the first
session. So those emails that you have where it say, here are all your sessions, right? Instead of having all of them, it'll say, thank you for enrolling in College Drive. We look forward to working with your student. Your student's tutor will be so-and-so. Here's their contact information. It'll look just like they have been. And it'll say, your first session has been scheduled, with so-and-so. They'll be in contact with you, scheduling further sessions, if you have any questions. I mean, it'll look very similar, and you'll still continue to get those emails.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, is there a way that then we could piggyback off of that email to either emailing the parents or responding back to you? Is that the schedule at College Drive? How that's generated?
It is.
So that would be a possibility of just.
You can reply to that email.
Okay.
As far as I schedule the sessions.
Sure. And at some point, and this is just down the road, but if you did want us to be emailing parents in addition to or as another option instead of calling, if we got kind of a form letter that is just the things you want us to hit on every time when we're emailing a parent, that would be simple and consistent so that parents get the same thing from every tutor. But it sounds like call is the preferred.
Call is,
Yeah.
not only because it just sounds good to talk directly to the tutor, the person who's going to be sitting down with their child,
Sure.
but also it's just so much easier to just go ahead and take care of it. Because that's part of the issue with the thing before is the texting or the emailing back and forth just can take so long.
Mhm.
Whereas with a phone call with your calendar out, it can be done in a couple of minutes potentially.
Okay.
So that would be the way. Now, if you call and then follow up with an email and they respond to that email, then that is clearly the way that they would prefer to communicate with you.
Mhm.
But it just, I think it's, in general, as a general rule, it's better to actually connect over the phone to talk with them.
Cool. Thanks.
And
Derek?
Derek, you had a early question too.
So like you were just saying, it used to be kind of this way, except I think we scheduled meeting the first session. I can't remember exactly what it was. And I was curious, I don't think I ever learned why it changed, and if we could potentially avoid what costs us to change it to the way we do it now. Does that make sense?
Yes.
They had the first way and the second way, which is like, and I don't like either. And the third way, which I think will be better. But
Right.
why would we switch from way 1 to way 2? Because it's gonna have the same problem.
Where this is the third.
Yeah.
Jonathan, can you attest to that quickly before we move on? Because I know that your preference originally was the original way of tutoring, and then we switched.
This is a wonderful compromise that will solve all our problems.
I think having the office schedule the first session gets past a lot of the problems
Yes.
of making that first contact, and then letting us schedule the sessions.
This is
Solves the problems of
This has
what
been
those
vetted
scenarios
quite
are.
thoroughly, I will say that.
Yeah,
Oh,
Jess
that sounds
was
good.
around during that time, and I think
Yes. So I was there when we moved from the original way of scheduling to where we did it all at the office. And the main reason for that is our parents were feeling a disconnect. They felt like all the work was being done with the tutor and there was no company to back up that tutor. They only spoke directly with the tutor. They never really had a representative. So this marriage of us scheduling the first session and having that first contact with the parent and letting them know if you're having any problems, there's someone to go to, kind of pulls the best of both worlds where we have that first initial contact, and then tutors can take on the rest and eliminate the middleman after that.
So we really do have to move on at this point. Eric and Jody, I did see your hands. Please,
We can talk.
if you have any more questions, please feel free to let us know. But thank you so much.
Okay, we're gonna have dinner at 6:10 still. I am not going to push that back a half hour, don't worry. And you're still getting out of here at 8:30. We're not going till 10 or something. Anyway, am I in the lines? All right. Anyway, we don't have time to play the game tonight. Sorry, but we went over on logistics. But I do have important things to tell you guys. Who in here, please raise your hand if you have taught one of our classroom courses or plan to. Okay, a lot of hands in here. Important info right now. Y'all remember session 3 and 6 and the game in there? That game is horrible. I hate it. I got this job in part so I could get my hands on the curriculum and change it. And I'm not kidding about that. That's how passionately I wanted to change that. So I have done that. We were going to look at one of those tonight. There are 2 now. So if you look at that right-hand side, I know it's left for some of you, most of you right-hand side of your folders, in the back there are 2 sets of instructions, one for ACT Jeopardy and one for ACT Who Wants to Be a Theoretical Millionaire. And those are the new game instruction packets. That's what's going to be in sessions 3 and 6 after an upcoming change to the prep class. The other changes are mostly cosmetic. If you've liked the typefaces here tonight, you will like the typefaces coming up. I like them a lot more. Anyway, smaller change, obviously. But the new games, they're in session 3 and 6. Same general format in those sessions for those who do not teach the prep class and don't know. I think it's a really cool format we have there. In sessions 1 and 2, we go over all 4 sections of the test. We do really deep dives into those. The kids get to know those really well. Then in session 3, we do a big review game and then a practice test. And the practice test, it's like a half-length practice test, but it's really helpful to put that all together, try it out. Then we do 4, 5, we do review, even deeper dives into that material, and then 6, we have another game, another practice test. So it's a lot of drilling, gets into that really good, but I do think those games were lacking in any kind of direction or substance. So, sorry. But anyway, so the new games, I think they're much better. You'll see so the first one is from ACT Jeopardy. There's also ACT Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Maybe I can just show you those really quick tonight. But as the game instructions outline everything. They have the questions that are on the slides, what the instructions for it are, how you can play alternate versions. It really is up to you, depending on the size of your class, how you want it to go. The basis is still in reviewing the homework. So all the questions do come from the homework they have been assigned in sessions 1 and 2, or in 4 and 5. So it's a good way to review. If the students have done their homework, they have an advantage, and that's how I want you to be pitching the homework now, okay? That they will be able to one-up their peers in a review game. That might make them do the homework more. I think it's a bigger incentive, so I think that'll help, all right? Now, the way these go, they are slightly more, complicated PowerPoints in that they are, and this is, I should also say, credit to DriveSafe and that whole side, where I think they have a little more, they've been around longer and they have some of that creative content within their prep classes. And they have some games like this. So that was kind of where we were talking about doing this kind of thing. But in the Jeopardy show, it's the same as regular Jeopardy, except without Alex Trebek and money and all that. And so you have the 5 categories, 100 to 500 on each of them. You have English, math, reading, science, and surprise. And yes, I mean, surprise devilishly hard in some cases, because I like doing that to the students. Anyway, so you have these. You would call a student, I would say, Karen, you're the first one to play, or we would do something to figure out who's going to go first. Karen, which category and number do you want?
Science for 200.
Science for 200, perfect. You would just click on that, use a mouse, and there you go, science for 200. Question number, page number is there, you can read it out. Karen would get to answer. Do you know off the top of your head? No, I'm just kidding. No, but you would find out it's H. If she gets H, that's great. And then you would just click on this arrow to go back. And sometimes the arrows can get lost, so just, anyway, you go back. And you'll just have to remember which ones have been crossed off. I can't really do that. Yeah,
I can fix that.
You can fix that? Okay.
I can fix that.
There we go, Nick. Okay, awesome. And then Karen would get to pick another one, like English or surprise for 100. Let's do that and see what I picked for that. I did that question. If a cat is tricolor, then it's a female, which of the following statements would also be true? In my experience, this is students' most hated question. So, surprise for 100, I liked putting it there. And you would just play, and there's probably a little more than you need, but enough that you can do in a half hour. So it's a little more malleable, and I think it'll be a little more fun. It's a little more directed. The reading and science questions, you will all be happy to hear, are real reading and science questions now. So anyway, I know that was my frustration with session 3 and 6. Anyway, those games. So anyway, yes, so that's what that one looks like. The Millionaire one, same idea, kind of ripping off the game show. And you have your numbers, so you would start at the bottom, you would go to $100. How many conflicting viewpoints passages are there on the science test? What's the answer?
0.
1. What are you doing? I have failed so many of you if you think that. Anyway, no, it's B1, and then it would take you to this slide, correct, go to the next question, and then you go to 200, and maybe for 200, this is a big English question, you want your 50-50 option, we do that, get rid of 2 of the answers. You'd say H, and you're wrong, and then it passes off to another student, you go continue the game, all the way up to 1 million, which I made the one that for some reason students can never get. What is the order of the 4 passage types on reading? That is my $1 million question, because they need to know that. Sometimes they don't know it. So anyway, and there's also phone a friend and ask the audience if you want to do those, if you're familiar with that game. But yes. Any questions on this?
How do those phone a friend and ask the audience things work in our version?
Yeah, I think... Sorry, what?
Does the computer generate the...
No, I was thinking like for phone a friend you could ask another player, and then for ask the audience you would just poll the class.
Okay.
I thought that was the easiest. Now, I demoed this with a class in Denver where I had 2 students, which turned out not to be the best demo for either of the games. They had fun with it. We had a fun time. But yeah, hopefully a bigger class I think is what this would play to. And I don't even mean bigger by like 25 students, but just 3 to 5 to 7. But even with 2, I mean, you can do this, or you can find other activities. With 2, a lot of things are changing anyway. So, any other questions? Does this seem like an improvement?
Yes.
Okay.
It does. And one other question.
Yeah.
Does the computer keep track of which lifelines they used, or do we just keep track of what they used?
No, and you can, I don't know if, I think you can decide how competitive you want to get with it. I was thinking you can keep track, or you can just let it be an option every time. I don't think we have to be too strict with it. But yeah, Marty.
So with 2, I know previously with 2 students and 3 students, try to do games, but then sometimes like students are like, can we just review some things? It's like sort of one-on-one, and you're like, yeah, let's do that. But I like this because it does break up the, I guess, for lack of a better word, monotony. Sometimes, like the classroom feel, it makes it fun. Yeah. But one question is, do we have any kind of prize? Like, should we like get a candy bar or something?
We talked about that. There's none at this time. We could work on that. I mean, I have this. I can show you what happens when you get the $1 million. Your prize is knowledge, and that's what it says. So if you go to this and you go to the million and you answer you're a millionaire in knowledge, not in money. That's the prize. But no, and we can think about that. I know DriveSafe does some of that stuff. But yeah, for now we were thinking just the fun of it. Sure, but maybe at some point.
And then I know reviewing the practice test, grading and reviewing both session 3 test light and session 6 test light is always an important thing to do, especially session 6, which is really tricky because you're running out of time. They're like so excited to have made it through all 6 classes, but they also want to know their score and how they're doing. So I like the bolstering of the games because they're way fun for them to hopefully take part in. But I was just thinking, like, maybe even pare down the light test a little bit to give us enough time, because they seem like something that could easily go like half hour to 40 minutes to like.
I would ask exactly. I would ask you to keep time in mind.
Yeah.
And if you probably just have to have a hit hard mark of 40. If your class starts at 3, at 3:40 you've got to be starting the light test probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they're a little malleable, and I am totally exploring that with the light test. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I don't know if it's fully manageable like in the next month, but you know, it's something I think. Okay. Especially as I build we'll talk about the parallel SAT course. It's easy to improve on that.
Yeah.
Say just a couple of observations. You know, one is that when you're doing the couple things to keep in mind is that whatever we're teaching, whether you're tutoring, certainly doing a class, owning the material, like owning the game is key. So it would be easy to say, well, I didn't invent this, I'm not fully vested in it. If you don't own it, you're not going to teach it well. And that's true of reviewing a passage that you may not particularly like. So I think it's critically important to, if you own it, you kind of watch Jonathan do it. If you own it, it's great. So I think it's all, it's on us to own whatever we're doing. And the other thing, this will come up more, is just, at the end of the day, it's, we are trying to maximize time on task, which is doing practice questions, developing technique, developing confidence, understanding different ways of doing it, so that the concern of getting, I can see like a small group of students saying, but we just want to review. I think that can be done within this context, because it is, the whole idea is it's a way to have time on task, but do it a little differently, less monotony, as well. But we never want to get too far away from what it is they're supposed to be doing, which is practicing questions, learning how to do them, learning how to get faster, learning how to get better.
All right. I will talk to you at dinner. It's time. So everyone, get food, have fun. Here's a picture of a dog, I think. Muskrat, I don't know. Have fun. All right, standing, and thank you for your patience. Is everyone enjoying the food? All right. No one with a moral aversion to pizza? Okay, good. We're doing it right. All right. Thanks to Marilyn for organizing all that. And while we're thinking about it, thanks to Jessica over here for diligently documenting the meeting for those layabouts who aren't here. And yes, I just called you layabouts. No, I'm kidding. You're wonderful parts of our company. No, so thank you to Jessica for filming this.
Did you make sure to record us eating? Just to like rubbing the
She did.
Okay, good.
No, it's okay. All right. Yeah, we had pizza and brownies, so you could have been here for that. No. All right. So let's go ahead and move on. We are going to talk about, I think, something you're all excited to hear about, maybe, the new SAT. So introducing the new SAT. As you know, not only is Colorado in 2017 changing to the SAT as their official state test, supplanting the ACT, the SAT itself has changed. The test, the last version of the old SAT, the one that was scored on that 2,400 point scale that many of you probably took in high school if you took the SAT, that is gone. It was last administered, it's going to be administered for the last time tomorrow, actually. I have a student who is taking it tomorrow. I hope she does well. That's the last time. And then it is getting a Viking funeral. They're putting it on a boat and lighting a flaming arrow on it and everything. And the new SAT is starting in March, and it is a very, very different test. You have new books in front of you, and these books are going to be our Bibles for the foreseeable future with the SAT. There might be a new book, there might be better materials in the future, but for now, this is what we have. Very similar to the ACT book. The first half is kind of intro material. It's the College Board's sort of intro material about the SAT and how it works and all that stuff. And then there are 4 practice tests. So the ACT book, your red one, has 5. The SAT book has 4. Red book, blue book, nice and easy to keep track of. I did ask you guys to prep test 1 out of there. I emailed it to you as a PDF, so I hope you got a chance to look at that. We'll be working with it tonight a little bit. But first off, why don't we go ahead and show you what is on the new SAT. What does it look like? How is it scored? On the left-hand side of your folders, we finally get to work on that left-hand side, unless it's your right-hand side. After the groups and everything, there are a couple of documents I want to show. Sorry, I'm going to step out of frame for just a second. But we have, all right, so we have these things. Then we have the ACT-SAT comparison chart. This is something students will be getting, too, so this is something you can review. We have the SAT scoring sheet. It's a giant flow chart. I'll explain that later on, but that's something that will go to students as well. The SAT test format sheet, it's the equivalent of the ACT test format sheet. This will be in student folders when they do SAT stuff as well. General SAT strategies, this is what students will be getting, so you can review that. And then then there's the SAT math reference sheet. It's the equivalent of the ACT math sheet. So all of that. So these are kind of the equivalents. So we have that material. And then the big one for you guys is SAT Concepts instructor version. This is a 40-page document in which I have indexed. I have created a question type for every single question in the book. I have indexed difficulties of every question on the math test and lots of other things, So it is all in here. It will tell you everything you could possibly want to know about the questions in this book, and it's all there for you as you prep some of that material, or if you are interested in learning more, all right? So that's all that stuff, if you can refer to it as we move along tonight. And there's a lot to go through here in regards to what is on the new SAT. I will move as fast as I can, and just know that I will not probably hit every point I have in the PowerPoint. That's why I have given you exhaustive reference materials, and I can send you these slides as well if you would like to learn more. But we're going to hit as much as we can, okay? So the basics. It is a 4-section test, but with 3 content areas. It starts with a reading test, which is 65 minutes, 52 questions, and 5 passages, one of which is a paired passage, all right? Then you have a writing and language test. That is the equivalent of the ACT English test. So English on ACT is writing on the SAT, and writing on the ACT is just called essay on the SAT. And yes, it's confusing and sounds like a Dr. Seuss book, but it's true. Then we have 2 math tests. One is without a calculator. That is 25 minutes. It's 20 questions. 15 of them are multiple choice, and 5 are grid-in, student-produced responses. That was on the old SAT as well. Then you have a math test with a calculator. It's 55 minutes, 38 questions, 30 are multiple choice, 8 are student-produced responses. Then you have the optional essay. It's 50 minutes, it's 1 essay, it's kind of like a DBQ. We'll look at it later. Total time is 3 hours, unless you're taking it with the essay, in which case it's 3 hours, 50 minutes, and you're going to have to bring a Red Bull. So, scoring. This is where it gets complicated, and I'm going to have to skim. The SAT gives you 15 separate scores, 18 if you're doing the essay. It's a little insane, hence the flow chart, which took me an entire day to make, I think. Yeah, and the flow chart kind of shows the overall, which is most important, is that 400 to 1600, which is your overall total score. That's what you would say, like, what'd you get on the SAT? I got a 1450. That's what you're talking about, all right? And that is a combination, as you'll see, of 2 section scores. Math, which is 200 to 800, and evidence-based reading and writing, which is 200 to 800. And that combines test scores, 10 to 40 out of each of the 3 tests, except math, which is combined. And then you have cross-test scores, and then sub-scores for each test. And then the writing is just off on an island, and it's 3 2 to 8 scores, 1 in reading, 1 in analysis, 1 in writing. 2 readers provide a score of 1 to 4, they're added for 2 to 8, but those scores are not combined, mixed, or added with any other scores on the SAT, so they are very literally on an island on their own. So, a little confusing, hence the flow chart, hope it makes sense. Any questions so far? All right. So, let's talk about the reading test. Sorry, Eric?
Is there like a break? Because a lot of students ask about breaks in between like sections. Do you know?
Great question. I don't know where it's administered. I would imagine after the writing and language test, because the ACT does it right in the middle after math. So on just equivalency, that seems like where it would be. But I know the SAT used to be, those 10 sections, and they would give you maybe 2 or 3 breaks after a couple of those sections. It might be a similar thing. Maybe they just give you a little one in between. I would not be surprised. College Board is a little more lenient on those things. Back there.
Where's the cross-test scores come in again?
The cross-test scores are, they're 10 to 40. They're reported in 2 areas, analysis in history and social studies and analysis in science. And that comes from, those are question types that appear on all sections of the SAT. And there, for instance, so there is no science on the SAT like there is on the ACT, but there are what they call informational graphics, which are graphs, tables, and charts. And those are not just on math, they're also on reading and writing, believe it or not. So that's where those cross-test scores come in.
Do they go into the 1600?
No, they're completely separate. I mean, they don't go in. They do go in so much as what you get right and wrong contributes to it, but they are separate overall.
So what do colleges look at? Are they looking at, oh, you got 4,500?
I think they're mostly looking at the 400 to 1600. They're probably looking at the 200 to 800s, and beyond that, I think it depends on the institution and the program. If you're trying to be a math elite, they might look more at the math sub-scores. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, do colleges, would they see all of these separate scores?
They get everything.
The whole thing? Okay.
I don't know what a score report looks like yet, because there are none, hasn't been administered yet. But that's been...
Yeah, so there's a couple ways of looking at it. So in terms of what colleges look at, well, they haven't yet. So March will be the first test where they will start to look at it. I think it is very safe to assume that the the 200 to 800 in verbal and math, which is the long-standing way, will be the way it will be moving forward. I think it's absolutely correct that if you're, School of Mines at MIT and Caltech, the math score will weight more heavily. Other schools, the verbal may weight more heavily. There's two ways to look at those sub-scores. So there's the cynical way, and then there is the more optimistic-looking way of it. So the cynical way of why these sub-scores were created was as a way for the College Board and the SAT to do exactly what it did in Colorado, which is to win over states by saying, yes, look, we are evaluating science performance. If you look at it, what they are using to evaluate science, while yes, there are some data interpretation problems that look like the science section, they're also pulling out of science content that occurs in a grammar question and literally pulling that over to the sub-score and from the reading passages. So it's kind of odd when you look at it. I don't think colleges are going to care at all. I think high schools may look at it for evaluating performance as a mandated test. That's probably where it'll get looked at. But from a college standpoint, it's not. It won't matter.
Should we push for this perhaps though, if they're gonna get hit kind of double whammy on both the 800 and cross-section score?
I just don't think the when we're training students, I just don't think that cross-section, I'm pretty certain is only going to come into play for schools evaluating, a science department at Evergreen High School, here's what your cross-section scores look like. I think that's where it comes into play.
But here is a benefit of the new SAT. You teach a kid how to read a graph on one test, they'll do it on all three. So those questions are on all the tests. There are question types that recur. So if you get good at one set of skills, it kind of goes throughout. And that has always, I think, been the philosophy behind the SAT. Whether you're doing math, reading, whatever section, the idea is that the general skills should be unified, and I do think that continues on the new SAT. And it's one of the reasons I do like this test. If we're admitting our biases, I do like this test more than the ACT. But I'm that kind of thinker, and everyone is a different kind of thinker. And that will continue, and I think one of the nice things is that choice isn't going away. On the test date will change for like what the state test is, but the ACT isn't getting hog-tied out of the state. So, yeah, anyway. All right, so let's talk about the test. The reading test, as I said, it's 5 passages. You got 65 minutes, and it's 10 to 11 questions per passage. Here are the passage types. This is adapted from what College Board calls them, but I came up with my own classifications that I think are simpler to understand. Number 1 is always literature, world or US. And in your concepts packet and strategies packet, it explains all of this if you want to look. Social studies is the next one, kind of similar to social science on the ACT. Then you have a science section, and this is more straight up science. It's actually going to talk about data and about scientific theory a little bit more in depth than maybe natural science on the ACT. History, number 4, that'll come from what they call the Great Global Conversation in the College Board book, which just means a document from history or a U.S. founding document like Federalist Papers, that kind of thing. We're going to look at one tonight that I think was written by like Mary Wollstonecraft on women's suffragette movement, stuff like that. And then they have another science. We're about to call it science again. And there's Yoda reading. Real Star Wars theme tonight. I didn't plan on that. All right, reading question types. I made these up. They're based on the content areas that are scored, but I think this is clear to our students and staff. Detail and evidence, that's the majority of the questions. They have these paired questions where they'll ask you to answer something from the passage and then say, where did you get the evidence? And they'll give you 4 options, lines 54 to 55, 63 to 65. Those are paired questions that are actually pretty manageable to do together. So those are kind of nice. There's like 2 of those per passage. Words in context, you're all familiar with that. As it is used in line 65, the word supercalifragilisticexpialidocious most nearly means what? I've never seen that. That'd be really fun. Anyway, rhetorical strategy and purpose. What did the author intend here? What could the author do better here? That sort of thing. Main idea and arc. Arc being important because in some of those storytelling passages, they really do ask about what changes over the course of the passage. And then interpreting data where they will give you a graph. Those are on the sciences or the social science. Derek, do you have a question? No, okay, sorry. All right, here is the breakdown in a pie chart form. Detail and evidence making 45%. Those words in context being 19. Rhetorical strategy 13, main idea 12, and interpreting data 11. So this being a rough half, and then the others more equal distribution. And that's Say all this data is based on the 4 tests in the book because that's all we have. This data could change as we get more, but for now, this is the best analysis I have based on what is available to us. Okay. Reading strategies, 13 minutes per passage now. Everyone breathe a sigh of relief for your students. 13 minutes per passage. On the ACT, as you might remember, it's 8.5 for a almost identical amount of material. This means that our strategies just inherently change. Pacing is objectively easier on the SAT. The content is not necessarily easier or harder. I think that will depend on the student. The fact that you're reading more what I would call real literature and articles on the SAT, you know, they have some Charlotte Bronte. They have, as I said, Mary Wollstonecraft. To me, that makes it easier because there's more to hang your coat on in the text. I understand that'll be harder for some people, but even if it is, you got 13 minutes to do it. That's really nice. That's better. So no need to skim. Maybe in some cases. Obviously, there are extreme cases in everything. But I would say we're not skipping straight to the questions. The questions are a little deeper and more involved, so we want to understand those readings. And I finally found an acronym that spells something for reading, and I'm so happy. You might remember TAT-TAT from the last training, which was my last acronym. Didn't spell anything. Now I have cat paw. Context, historical or social, you want to be reading for that. Arc of the narrative, tone of the piece, perspective and purpose, argument or theme, word usage and meaning. Those are the 6 things we should be reading for and thinking about as we answer the questions. Cat paw. All right. General ACT reading strategies apply to the SAT too, and there are different strategies. Evidence is giving them more focus, rhetorical strategy giving more focus, and on that paired passage, you can't do the thing of answer one, then do the questions, read the other, do the questions, because it does not distinguish which of the 2 it's coming from. But that's very similar to the old SAT, if you did the paired passages on that. All right? So again, I have to move quickly through some of this. But let's go ahead and talk about writing and language. 35 minutes and 44 questions. 4 passages, 11 per passage, and they have some rough subjects. I'm not focusing on it much because they're all written for the SAT, and you're just analyzing the writing and grammar. So the passage types, just like on English on the ACT, we don't focus on that. But yes, this one is comparable to the English test. Even the categories of questions are similar. They call rhetorical expression of ideas, but it's the same content areas. And usage and mechanics they call standard English conventions, but same content areas. And here are those content areas. Under rhetorical, they will ask you, and again, these are after a lot of research, this is what I settle on as our content areas for the SAT. They have sentence combination questions. They really like those, and that's a holdover from the old SAT. They like those, where you have 2 sentences, combine them. Organization, how do we organize this? Very similar to ACT English. If we're going to put a sentence in, where do we put it? Repetition and irrelevancy, redundancy questions. We're all familiar with those. Rhetorical strategy. We want to make the best choice for the passage, or as I like to call them, help the writer questions. Like the writer is considering doing this. Should he or she do that? Help the writer, that kind of, we're familiar with those. And then misplaced modifiers, we all know those. And data interpretation somehow crops up on this test too, and yes, it is every bit as awkward as you would think it would be, where you have to analyze a graph and then analyze a sentence and see if the student is using the info in the graph correctly in the sentence. It's bizarre. There's only 1 or 2 per test. So, Marty.
Can you describe again the sentence combination? Is that like punctuation?
Yeah, they'll give you 2 sentences like with a period between them. They're not grammatically wrong. They just want you, if you had to combine them, what's the best way? And maybe that's a semicolon, maybe that's the word and, maybe it's a hyphen.
Maybe it's rewording them
Yes.
in some way. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, and there's about 2 per test. Punctuation with all the familiar rogues gallery, word choice, general word choice, and especially transitions and introductions. They love those. Pronouns in the form of homonyms, antecedent agreement, and subject agreement. Verb tense and form, which sometimes includes subject-verb agreement, and prepositions. They like prepositions 1 or 2 per test. All right? And again, I cataloged every single one in the book, and they're in your packets. Word choice is the most common, followed by rhetorical strategy over here. These are averages across all 4 tests, but they all crop up. So this section is the most similar to its ACT counterpart. Same general question types, nearly identical pacing. 8.75 minutes per passage versus 9, but with fewer questions on the SAT. So once again, pacing is generally gentler. Maybe we won't say easier, it's gentler. Same strategies apply. Some of the differences, a little more weight towards rhetoric. there are those informational graphics, and even more so on the ACT, I would recommend the students slow down, do not rush through the writing and language. We have to tell them that on English all the time because it's an easy test to get in here and move too fast and make easy mistakes. You don't have to move too fast. Don't make those easy mistakes. Slow down and analyze these things. The questions are, I would say, generally a little easier on the SAT for writing and language than they are on the ACT for English, but overall comparable, and timing overall comparable. This is very similar. Okay. Finally, the math test. Math test, far and away the most different. For one, you have two sections, the no calculator portion and the calculator portion. For that no calculator, as you can imagine, they are just have it under their desk. They're not allowed to use it. Calculator, you are allowed to use it. The question types, these are their College Board's overall hierarchy of questions. And the names they have sound super silly, but that's what they have. So they have Heart of Algebra, and that's 19 questions total. And those are on linear equations, inequalities, graphs, relationships. It's working with, it's very basic, not basic algebra, it's fundamental. It's often difficult algebra, but it's fundamental on that linear equation level. Then you have problem solving and data analysis. That's where you analyze relationships. You use your ratios, your proportions, your percentages. It's about quantitative data. It's about probability. It's about analyzing graphs, a lot of analyzing graphs, or making a graph, that kind of thing. Passport to advanced math, sounds silly, but that's where they have nonlinear equations. So your quadratic equations, your quadratic functions, your exponential functions, and bigger algebraic expressions. And then additional topics in math, which is majority geometry. This is where you'll see geometry on this test. It's area and volume, it's line triangles, angles, circles, right triangles, unit circle, trigonometric functions, and once in a while other kinds of equations that don't fall under these two hierarchies. But yeah.
Are those compositions of both tests or just the calculator?
Both. So there's an overall 58 questions. So this is kind of how they break them down. But I have more breakdowns. I have so much data in here. So this is the no calculator section. You'll notice there is no problem solving and data analysis. The no calculator is mostly Heart of Algebra, mostly Passport to Advanced Math, a little bit of additional topics, 3 questions specifically. Then on the calculator section, that's where all the problem solving and data analysis questions show up. So that's that big gray one here. There's your Heart of Algebra, there's your Passport, and there's your additional topics again. So they look a little different. This section is the most different from its ACT counterpart. The basic strategies, they will always work. Early questions are harder. Later questions are difficult. You can skip difficult questions when needed. Don't skip all of them, but if you need to skip a couple here and there, of course, you can make up that time with the easier ones. Yes?
When I was taking the calculator portion of the test, I noticed that there were some questions where I was like, I don't even know how I would use the calculator.
Yeah.
Like it was saying like a negative association. I'm like, how would you do a calculator on this problem?
You would, and that's one of my tips is
Yeah,
you
like-
want to minimize the calculator on both sections.
Like point out to the student that like just because it says calculator doesn't mean you have to use one.
Yeah, that's a great observation. It's very true. But there are many differences. Pacing is slightly easier, though not as dramatically. No calculator portion, 1.25 minutes per question. Calculator portion, 1.45. Minor, but it adds up in the end. Madison.
I know like when I was in high school and took the SAT, you would get penalized if you guessed on a question and got it wrong. Is that still a thing?
It's gone now. It's just like the ACT. You only get points for correct ones. Incorrects make no impact. Yeah. So that's a thing of the past. Yes.
Are all the questions weighted the same?
Yes, all 1 point. Yeah. The content. SAT math has always had its own particular identity. It's more about logic than heavy curriculum recall, as we all know. That is changing. The SAT is more skills-based now, like the ACT, but even more, it's really heavy into some of that Common Core curriculum. I'm not super familiar with Common Core, but from my understanding, those content areas do match up with some of that, and I just know geographically where the SAT is coming from. That seems to make sense. Am I right on that, Ben?
Yeah, it's absolutely right. I would say was influential. I think SAT won. I can't recall if it was 3 or 4 states away. I know Indiana, Michigan, Illinois were 2 states in addition to Colorado that were ACT states, and this was a big part of their case for switching over the alignment to Common Core. So as much as Common Core is controversial in some places, it's less controversial in the halls of departments of education and among teacher groups, so.
Yeah. So the SAT, they still give you all the basic dimensions and equations for shapes and arcs at the beginning of the test. So the focus is weighted more towards working with given info than regurgitating formulas. Doesn't necessarily mean it's easier though. Difficulty. Here's the tricky part. Anyone play Halo in here? There we go. That's where my people are. The SAT math has some massive difficulty spikes, and they are going to throw people for a loop. You probably noticed that if you looked at it. There are some just devilishly hard questions that I had never seen before, and I've been having to do a lot of research on that. And I think they're noticeable enough that I felt compelled to catalog them, and I created a difficulty scale and assigned it to every single question in the book because I'm neurotic. And anyway, so easy questions are level 1s. This is the difficulty scale in the Halo games, just for fun with us adults here. I think those are ones anyone can do, of any education, probably. I mean, I know it's different, but I'm just saying it's a generalization. The normals, most people, I think, and then maybe an easy mistake here or there, but those are pretty easy too. The heroic ones, level 3, that's where we're getting harder, but I think you can get your head around them with just a little bit of work. And then I think the legendary ones, level 4s, are ones I found personally impossible. Doesn't mean everyone else is. Doesn't mean we can't figure out how to teach it effectively. But those are heavy, heavy level stuff. Or they're just different. They're more abstract. So here's the average question difficulty across all 4 tests in the book. Easies are this right here. Normals are this. Level 3, level 4 being the smallest sliver, which is good. And I made this specifically because students, I think, might freak out when they see the SAT math. And I want them to look at this and say, statistically, look, even if we consider the level 4s a wash, you get all of that, you're getting a good score. And we're not going to consider them a wash. We're going to work and we're going to get better at it. But if you did, it's still there. Now, the no calculator portion, to me, is hands down harder. It just is. And the level 4s are the biggest sliver here, whereas it goes down on this. Now, the reason I think, and that might be different for some people, I was trying to keep an objective viewpoint in mind with this, but I think in general, what I would call abstract math, which is more just based just in the equations, is harder for people when they are not math experts in and of themselves. I think people like me who are more on the verbal side like word problems, we like graphs, we like geometry, all that stuff. Virtually none of that is on the no calculator. That's all over here. So the difficulty distribution for the average student, I think, is better on the calculator test than the no calculator. But yeah, so just this is kind of showing us how to, when to freak out and when not to freak out.
So can you read this? That key,
Yeah, I'm sorry. The key's too small. This is easy. This is level 2. This is level 3. This is level 4.
John,
what's beeping?
Sorry. Question. So traditionally on the SAT, on the math, you would see that even more so than the ACT. So like on the ACT, you get to the hard questions, and every so often, 60 is easier than 58 or so. And part of the art of doing well is getting to all the questions you can do, and just knowing how to move through the tough ones. My experience is the SAT was even more acute in that regard. That the final question was almost never, as always, typically not as hard as questions that precede it. So it's a question to you from what you're seeing. Is that still the construct?
I think there's an exponential difficulty spike. You go easier, easier, harder, harder to the end. Except in the case where you have those first 15 or first 30 are the multiple choice. You have that spike, and the last couple I would say are the highest levels, generally with ebbs and flows throughout. But then the student-produced responses start over again. So the first couple are easy, and then they go back up. So that would be my explanation. All right, that's difficulty. All right, strategies. We want to get to know those linear equations and get working with those with students. Don't be afraid to skip questions, especially in those huge difficulty spikes. And there are definite time sucks. You'll notice them. They've put a couple in there where there will be like a page of text. And it's just like, you probably can do this, but just go past it for time's sake and come back, because you can get 5 questions while you're reading that for some people who are slower readers. Use your calculator as little as possible, even on the calculator portion, which was something Derek observed. Very good observation. Look for simple processes and solutions first rather than jumping to more complex ideas, which is my suggestion for math on either test. And I always think, this is something I've told my students on the SAT before, I think it still applies, and students like this. Look for other like math-based puzzles to train your brain with, like Sudoku. It teaches kind of a style of, I don't know, analytical thinking that is helpful for this kind of thing. If you want to, in your study time, if they want other study tips, students like that kind of thing. Yeah.
Logic puzzles and riddles are really good.
Okay.
I think specifically for having prepped one of these, they ask some questions that sort of logical reasoning can be helpful for. So
yeah, anything like that, that's great. Yeah. Marty?
Yeah, when I was helping do the PSAT, helping Julie with the PSAT curriculum development stuff, I noticed that specifically on the math, and I noticed it again on the SAT, is there's some questions on math where if you just dive right into it, it's going to take you longer than if you take like 10 or 15 seconds and go, oh, if I multiply by a common factor on this algebraic equation, all the fractions go away.
They love that.
Yeah, they love that trick. Like, you could do it brute force way, but if you can just sit there and look at it for a second, there's going to be a tweak that just saves you so much more time.
Yeah.
They do that all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. Very good. All right. Last one, I'm not going to go through all this. Student-produced responses. My number one tip, write your work out. They give you plenty of room. If you don't do it, you're not going to do well on those. That is the bottom line. Bank more time for them. They can sometimes take longer because you don't have those multiple choice ones to work with. And be really careful with your gridding. Keep the difficulty spike in mind, and do make a guess for each one. Harder to make a guess on these, but there's no penalty, as we were just talking about. All right, and that is the new SAT. Before we go into groups and do some actual fun stuff tonight, not that the rest hasn't been fun, it has been. Any questions? I know there's probably a lot. All right, it was just that thorough. David?
Do they do super scoring on this, on the SAT?
Don't know.
Okay.
It really, originally super scoring started, I guess the short answer is yes, it's a new test, we'll have to see. So you kind of, I guess we'll see is the short answer, but super scoring started with the SAT originally and then bled over to the ACT. So my presumption would be some version of yes. I mean, there's always been some schools that have held out and not wanted to do it. So we'll have to see.
All right. So I'm going to move ahead. We're going to do some group activities now. I asked you all to prep out of test 1. And the assignment is we're going to split into 5 groups. I've determined those. They're on the board. And I'll advance when I'm ready for you to see them. And you're each going to have an assignment, each group. It's out of the book. It's 5 questions from a particular section. I want you to look at those with your group, talk about the most effective way to teach them. I'm going to give you about 15-20 minutes to talk that over. Pick the question you want to teach, and then each group is going to come to the front and teach one question specifically from each of these sections to kind of do some brainstorming on how we might start teaching this test. Sound good? All right, here are the groups. Hey all. Sorry to interrupt. Why don't we go ahead and reconvene here? We took about 15 minutes. We're going to do some presentations. I'm going to have you guys hopefully roughly keep to about 3 minutes per presentation so we can stay on schedule tonight. Like I said, please pick, I think you guys already have, one question from what we looked at, and you're going to teach that to the class. Think about how you would teach it, either in a private or a classroom setting, whatever works best as education. And we're going to start with group 1, which is that group kind of in the back, doing writing and language. So, what have you guys got for us?
Up there?
Yes, so I can critique you. Or Ben.
Me?
No, we can critique them. We can tag team it.
Alright, so we were given the writing and language section, which is kind of easy. It's basically the same as the ACT was, the English section. And we chose question 44 for our example problem.
What's the page number on that?
Page 364. Okay. So, first off, just kind of stuff for the section. Read before and after the underlined part, so we kind of get the context. Make sure that all your tenses agree. You can't have a present tense and a past tense. Sometimes, like, you did this, but now you did this.
And a lot of the similar strategies still apply. Usually the simplest option is the way to go. Also, to sub in the words. If it's choosing between different options and you're not sure if you have time, try to read the different words and see which word pairing sounds correct.
All right, so what about this specific question?
So for number 44.
Yeah.
So it starts off, because today's students can expect to hold multiple jobs, some of which may not even exist yet. During our lifetime, studying philosophy allows them to be flexible and adaptable. Okay? So, our is underlined. Originally, in the first part of the sentence, today's students. It's kind of the subject we're going with. And then after the underlined portion, we have them. So it's a subject agreement. So the correct answer would be there.
What kind of question type do you think that is? Pronouns, right? Pronouns. So antecedent, however you say it, agreement. Yeah.
One of those.
Right. But I love your analysis there. That's always a great thing to break down with students where we have, it said, these students before, but it said them at the end, so they're in the middle. That contextual approach is great. So yeah, definitely the word. Any other thoughts on this section? Awesome, great work. Round of applause for that one. Okay, group 2. Brooks and his cronies.
Oh, thank you. Such an endearing.
Your name is just first alphabetically. I don't mean like. Yeah.
It's just all good.
It's a good band name. Brooks and his cronies.
Oh, wonderful. If I only had any musical talent at all. Okay, so we obviously had the reading section, which is, very similar to a lot of the sections that, well, not very similar, but similar to some of the sections on the ACT. We ended up deciding to go with question 36, which is on page 344 for all involved. We went with 36 because one person in the group realized that there's actually a way that you can kind of double up on your time. I guess with some students this would be better, with some students it would be worse. And at the end of the day, it is, I don't know the proper term, but it's very similar to a tone style question. I mean, you're trying to get at the feeling behind the question. So you're gonna have a lot of students that just get it, probably, or a lot of students that can read things like that, process it, and it works out just fine. However, for those that don't process it very well, there's a way you can sort of do two birds with one stone, especially considering that this style repeats. So did we want to pass
Yeah, so we could, you can look at question 36 and say, do I get this immediately or not? And if you get it, then great, answer it. And then question 36 is asking about where do you find the evidence for question 37 is asking about where do you find the evidence for question 36. If you read question 36 and you don't get it right away and you're really confused by it, then in the next question you have 4 options for where the evidence could be that will help you with the answer to question 36.
Yeah, so kind of just a general strategy for that, because those kinds of questions up here, like 38 and 39 are the same way. There's at least 1 or 2 in every single reading passage. And so kind of just a general strategy is, if you don't get it immediately, go to like your options for lines where there could be evidence, read those 4 lines, and then reread 36. Get your answer to 36, and then you also already have your answer for 37 because you already found the evidence that you think best supports your case.
Absolutely, couldn't have said it better myself. That is what it says in the strategies handout and on the concepts. So, no, it's a great strategy. You've got it right there. And you can even, on some of these, it's so cut and dry. You look at like the ones on 37, really only one of those lines even relates to the question. So it's a nice kind of a gimme. So I like that approach very much. Very clear, very good. It's a great way. And there are at least 1 of these paired ones on every passage, usually 2. So they comprise a great deal of it, and it's pretty easy to get good at them. So, excellent. Cool. Thank you. All right, group 3. Don't be nervous. Just remember, the skeleton is of a former instructor who got a question wrong. Yeah, we were pretty brutal.
Alright, so we had the calculator section for the first part of math, and we actually, even though they generally get harder as we go along, we actually chose question number 13. And the reason we chose this is because all of us had something different to say about it, and you can approach it from many different ways. So,
Sure. So
oh, sorry, it's page 379.
So this one is about, so they give you this, this separated by male and female and separated by different courses, you know, who's enrolled in what course. So you're basically looking at a stats graph or table. And the question says, a group of 10th graders responded to this survey describing what math course they're currently enrolled in. Which of the following categories accounts for approximately 19% of all the survey respondents? So kind of the first step there is to say, okay, I'm looking for 19% of the total. Well, the total is 310, and that's given. I don't have to add that up. And it's actually funny. Somebody else can go with this one, but my instinct with that is, okay, 19 is close to 20. What's 20% of 310? I'm looking for something around 60. So then if you read through the A through D answers, there's only one of those that is ending up around 60 and others.
And then, of course, since I'm a mind student, I was more of like, I need to make sure it's the exact value. And I just took 310 and multiplied it by 0.19, and the actual answer was 59, which is answer C. But we also...
Yeah, and I think this is, Jonathan was saying this about the SAT math. It's, sorry, you're right there. Jonathan. Sorry. Compared to the ACT math, I think every question looks a little more intimidating at first glance. And so students who are specifically turned off to math can be like, what are they even asking? There's all, like, what number do I look at here? Even though this is a relatively easier one, but every question has that sort of like digesting period. And it's also important to just always hammer home the fact that, like, you can do these alternative strategies, and an alternative strategy that works great for this question is just work backwards. They give you 4 choices out of the chart. You take that choice and put it over 310, and if it doesn't equal 19, move on to the next choice. It's not going to be the fastest, but it goes really quickly.
So basically work backwards and plug and chug would be a good strategy.
All right, no, I think that's great. That's awesome. The only other comments, if you look at my neurotic data, this was a level 2 question and a problem solving and data analysis, and it's a good idea of what I think a level 2 and a problem solving data analysis kind of question looks like. We had 3 different strategies, all equally good. I think I love them. I would probably gravitate myself towards Lydia's. I think we think the same on this, so that was awesome. But I liked all of them, so great job, everyone. And
Just so to the question of like what ends up in the science subscore, I can't say with certainty, although I'm sure it's back in the scoring table, but it's quite likely that 12, possibly 13, definitely 14 are those are the questions that get cross-tabbed over to the science section.
They do. I can confirm that. All right.
4s.
I just writing a piece. Yeah. Talk about that one.
We chose number 7 on page 368. Because it looks horrible, but really isn't that bad.
Oh, you cut yourself. I think I called this a 4.
This is a 1, Jonathan.
This was a 3.
This is a 1.
Sorry.
Come on, son.
We think this is one of those that students are going to look at and just kind of freeze, and maybe as tutors we're going to look at and just kind of freeze and be like, whoa, what is this?
And it says in there, so it says solve in terms of M, R, and N. It says solve 4P in terms of, and it's just like mind breaking, but the simple solution, level 1 algebra.
Yeah, the first thing I think most students will look at and try to do is they'll say, we have a fraction, we want to get rid of the fraction, multiply by the denominator. That gets rid of the fraction.
Gross.
That's nasty. You end up with m's all over the place and exponents, and it's an oogie mess. But if you look at it a little bit longer, what you can notice is this whole fraction is multiplied by p, and there's just an m on the other side. So what you can do to isolate the p is multiply both sides by the reciprocal of the fraction. So all you need to do is pick the choice that has the bottom on top, the top on bottom, p on the other side of the equal side, and basically flip this over and switch the m and the p, which is choice B.
No, and that's what Marty said about SAT math looking more complex on the surface totally applies to this kind of situation. That was kind of my benchmark for those level 3 ones, is once you look at, you're not sure, but the actual solution is probably pretty simple. And I think that's very true here. And my instincts aren't as good as yours guys, so I'm not a math person. But you're right, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we have to learn to talk about and teach, because it's those simple relationships to recognize that wind up being really important on SAT math, particularly the questions that at least look harder, even if they're not harder.
These are the scented kind, right?
Let's have a party, shoot some markers.
Choco mint.
From the board. And another thing that's good to, if students are looking at this and they can't figure out how to even conceptualize or simplify things, is what Nick did here and putting them into simpler variables or simpler constructs. So if we say, okay, let's look at the top of this and let's just call this whole thing A, and let's just call this whole thing B, and switching that around as opposed to just trying to make them visualize it all at once.
They do that a lot in upper level math, and it's really helpful. Like, instead of dealing with all the gross nasty, you can at least chunk it down and make it so much easier.
Another,
Go ahead, Vincent.
another strategy is just have the kids read the problem and say, what are you looking for here? Because when you say you're looking for D and they circle that, sometimes it becomes clear when they see that fraction line next to it. Or I like to put parentheses around all of this stuff.
Put up the force field, right?
Yeah. Now it looks different.
There you go.
I would also say with this one, if they just look at the choices, going back to old basic strategies, if their thought was first to multiply by the denominator, you'd end up with m's all over the place because you got this extra -1 there. But all of the choices look pretty much either like this or more simple, or either like this or simpler than this. So you're probably not going to want to make it more complex along the way.
Awesome. Great work.
Was everybody in this group equally complicit in choosing this problem to solve, or were there some among you who?
No, I did.
We
was,
all like this the most because of how gross it was, but also
I mean,
how
I don't know if we
simple
all
it's like.
No, I think democratically we decided on that one. The other one up there was,
I tried to filibuster.
question 15 is pretty complicated, but that is more about just like how you do that versus like necessarily having a new strategy.
15 is more, there's not really much strategy to it, it's more just about how to do the math.
I basically gave this group the questions I wanted to learn how to do. So I'm learning a lot tonight. All right.
So we'll teach
Group
you
5.
15
Okay. For my remedial.
Yeah. Marilyn, you got that? You got that one?
I haven't seen those markers since like the 90s.
Yeah. All right. Group 5 had the essay, which I didn't talk a lot about yet. But you can, what page was it on?
392.
392. Okay, take it away.
All right, so if you look at the essay, I think the first thing that we're going to have to establish to people that we teach this to is it's different from an essay they've probably written. Technically, I would classify this as a rhetorical analysis, and I think outside of an AP Lang class, you've probably never seen this before in an average high school curriculum. I think two things that will be really important is tell them to carefully read the box at the beginning and then the box at the end, because I think ultimately those will keep them focused on what they need to be doing, and also establishing, normally when you read a piece, you're either, developing your own response to it, how do you feel about it, or you're trying to figure out, okay, do I agree with them, or something like that, or even, are their ideas valid? And this is different than that. You're just trying to talk about how they develop their argument, not whether or not that argument is valid, but just whether or not, just how they went about doing it. And we talked about trying to get someone that's maybe not comfortable thinking about writing in that way to kind of understand what they're supposed to be getting at. I think a good thing to do is to look back at the kind of tips they give you at the beginning. One of the statements is evidence such as facts or examples to support claims. If you wanted to get technical, that would be something you would call logos. The appeals when you're writing. But really, it's just about, okay, they can look at a piece of the passage and ask them, here he gave a whole bunch of facts about, this national park, and ask the student, why did they do that? And I think if we can get them to start asking those kind of questions, then we can develop an understanding of what rhetorical analysis is without using any technical terms.
Yeah, so it's a good idea for them to start thinking about how can I make this a 5-paragraph essay? What is the way that we can organize this? So I think it was Sam Fiennes who mentioned logos, pathos, ethos, and that we learn these concepts in AP Lang courses, but it basically has to do with is the argument appealing to logic, emotion, or to authority. So there's sort of a double-edged sword there. For people who have taken AP Lang, they're going to know how to approach it that way. But there are quite a few students who will not be in an AP Lang course and won't really kind of understand that. So this is very different from the ACT essay where you're making an argument. Now you're looking at an argument and saying, how did they make this argument? So it's get a little bit meta. But when you start to look at it that way, where did they appeal to emotion? Then you can look in here, hopefully get your student to think, what came out to you emotionally, the way that they made this argument? What was an appeal to authority? Well, they have a line in here about both Republican and Democratic presidents supported this. That sounds like authority to me. There are people who vote Democrat, there are people who vote Republican. Hopefully this will look good to people on both sides of the aisle. It sounds to me like that's an appeal to authority. So just getting them to break that down and think, this paragraph can talk about authority, for example.
I guess another more general thing is, if someone tries to read this and then immediately start writing, I feel like they're gonna probably flounder a lot. But if you can go through and they kind of help honestly give you body paragraphs and these 3 bullet points. That's one way that you can set up your essay. But if you use these 3 as body paragraphs, then it'd be good to spend a couple times of finding bullets or evidence you want to use in each one. So you can make a very brief outline that should help streamline the writing process a lot better versus just trying to jump in and go for it.
Awesome. I love all of this. I've been thinking a lot about how to teach this, and actually this is a bunch of great stuff I'm definitely going to integrate into the curriculum. One of the things you guys noted that I love is looking at those boxes at the beginning and end. And actually our slide in the upcoming SAT prep class does that. It has a generic version of with the author's name removed, but it's always the same words. And you're right, you want to get to know how to do that. But I love the pathos, logos, ethos stuff. I think that's all great. Now I'm having flashbacks. I had to look at a lot of pictures of Jimmy Carter before finding the right one for the slide on the prep class card. Jimmy Carter has no good presidential portrait. It's weird. I don't know why. He was not the most photogenic president. Marty.
Sorry. I just had a question, and I kind of answered it looking through. But since we just had the one test, I was curious if it always took this form of explaining. So you're never writing about whether or not you agree with it or disagree with it.
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. Yeah, it's always in that form here. It's a rhetorical analysis. It looks a little like an AP DBQ in that it is a document with excerpts, but it's rhetorical analysis, which is a little different than historical analysis or argumentation.
So there's definitely a thing we want to. I'm sure it says it on the comparison chart, but with the students, ACT was always develop your position, support your position with evidence, and see how it relates.
This is not that.
Yeah, a lot of kids have trouble with that. The idea that they are not supposed to take a side and they're supposed to look at something that they maybe disagree with ultimately, but they're just supposed to say, how did they argue it? And so the point is, do not say anything about what you think about their argument. Don't say it at all.
And they're pretty bland positions they give you. This is Jimmy Carter talking about saving birds. It's not the most exciting or controversial thing.
Unless you live in Oregon.
Yes, I suppose that's true. But so they're more middle of the road, but you're right, it is still, you have to remove yourself from it.
It's probably still important though to stress having a thesis, having, those things. When we talk about having an argument, it's usually make sure in your thesis your argument is there, but still should have some sort of boil it down to, one sentence.
You are making an argument here. It's just the argument is how did they build their argument?
And then my question would be, they kind of give you these 3 points at the beginning. Do those change between?
No, it's always the same.
Okay. So would it be acceptable, kind of even if you're going for a top score, to very obviously build your 5-paragraph structure? The obvious thing would be to do, okay, it says evidence, and okay, paragraph 1, I'm gonna go find a piece of specific evidence that they used.
Yeah,
to
looking at sample passages or like sample responses on this in the ACT, I generally find, and Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, that would be a high scoring but not the highest. And I think the ones that play with structure a little more and show a little more originality in thinking get the highest. But am I wrong on that?
No, I think you're right. I think we kind of in trying to assess how we teach it, and even the ACT one changed over the last year from a really simple structure that we tend to not teach it for a 6. We kind of teach for improvement. So like in teaching it, it was like focused on the structure, because with the structure you guarantee yourself at least a solid place where it's not really going to factor into your admissions decision anyway. But we don't, the 6s, you're right, are creative, sometimes break the rules of the structure we might teach, and are gifted writers. So we want that organization. We want, to help students be able to think through it and get it written. The fact that you have 50 minutes here, and the ACT is longer now as well, although a much more complex assignment. Makes it harder. But I think that's a fair point, but I think we have to continue to teach it that way, because there will be so few ACE or equivalent of ACT 6 writers, that we can get someone at the ACT up to the 5s. We've done a really good job. Yeah, whatever is commensurate on this score.
A great observation, Group 5. Round of applause.
I was under the impression that Logos, Ethos, Pathos were the 3 musketeers. Am I wrong about that? Is that not accurate?
And Armagos was the 4th. All right, good work. I'm sorry, I'm like a cattle. Get over there. No, I didn't mean that. All right, so now I was extremely creative tonight. We're going to do the same thing. CBCT. No, different groups, different problems. You have in your folders and my folder looks like a bomb went off, but you have in here somewhere, it's at the back of the left-hand side, I think. It says ACT breakout sessions, practice problems. These are from a test you have not seen, okay? So this is new, and we want to kind of hone our ACT skills, all right? But same general thing. Here are the new groups. Here's what I want us to think about. Same assignment, you're going to come up and teach one question. But I want you to think about how you would teach it in tutoring versus teaching, and how it differs from an equivalent kind of thing on the SAT, all right? But here are the new groups. Group 1 is going to be Bob, Brooks. So let's go ahead and look at these. We're going to start with Group 1, Bob, Brooks, Carson, Eric, and Lydia, and talk about some reading. Okay.
Special code. All right, well, we're Group 1, as you can see. We started with just reading through the passage and doing the questions as any student would do the questions. One of the main things is, of course, we want to be underlining as we go along anything that jumps out to you that might be potentially important. Grab a pen, grab a pencil, whatever you happen to have. Underline it as you go. I didn't underline a lot, but I underlined individual phrases, and if you look at all of ours, all of them have individual sections underlined. We decided to go with question 5 as the one that we're going to be explaining, specifically because it is somewhat layered. The first thing that you notice is that you have a series of options, and you want to look at the clearest divisions of those options. So does anyone want to talk about what the division between those options was? Yeah.
So it says, as he's revealed in the incident of undertaking the construction of the basketball court, the grandfather can best be characterized as this move, then this move. Is kind of our layout of our answers. And if your kind of basic memory from reading is, okay, first he was happy and then he was not happy. So automatically we can say positive then negative. So we're looking for something that's positive then something that's negative, and we can rule out C and D because of that. And then we just kind of have to read the finer points between A and B. Is he defensive in the end, or is he accusatory in the end? You can look back. No, I'm not interested anymore.
It's a grandfather talking to
So
a
he's-
grandson.
So he's defensive in the end.
Yes.
He's not accusatory in the end.
Acting childishly.
That's how we narrow it down.
And then it also tied into question 8, which is an immediate follow-up to that.
Yeah, I just, okay, question 8 asks for, it can most reasonably be inferred from the 6th paragraph, line such and such, the statement that the basketball hoops can't be made smaller is which of the choices. I would note that if you answer 5 correctly and got that he was optimistic and then he's defensive, he's being defensive, the fact that he's being defensive when he's saying that the hoops can't be made smaller gives you some insight into 8 as well, and might lead you to the idea that this is an opinion stated indignantly. It's not a fact, he's not being apologetic, nobody's trying to humiliate anyone, he's just being defensive and saying, oh no, it can't be made smaller. On the other hand, if you had made a mistake on 5 and picked choice D, say, and thought that he was being apologetic, then the fact that an apologetically shows up as a choice in 8 as well could lead you down the wrong rabbit hole. So you need to be careful if you're using that sort of a technique.
Yeah. Well, that's great, and that's definitely one of the main things to recognize on the reading test for the ACT, the SAT, is those ideas of whether they're literally linked or not, because it's all coming from the same passage and the ideas are shared. You know, getting things right will lead to more things right. Getting things wrong will lead to getting more things wrong, probably. So I love that whole approach, and definitely the 2 sides of the answers. That's something the ACT loves so much on all the sections. So really good to single that out.
Jonathan and I had not discussed this before, but this is kind of an inspired choice of question. I've taught this test a ton. A lot of school workshops. I've used 59F, so I'm intimately familiar with this exam. But those are questions. 10 itself is a very difficult question. It's 8 that students get wrong because it's very difficult. 5 and 8 are great choices because students really struggle with those. So, nice job.
All right, well, thank you, Group 1. All right, Group 2. Who noted to me that I put a bunch of the writing and language people in the English group. That was an accident, but there you go. Like I said, you guys get the easy section. All right, so what do we have?
Number 23. So number 23, if you want to think about it like as a math problem, it has 2 variables. You've got a verb and a pronoun. So it's not just choosing pronouns because the conjugation changes, which is not really the technical language I was supposed to. But just making clear to the student that there are 2 parts to this question that you need to address. Makes and then the pronoun, or making a pronoun. So I guess the first thing you want to do is figure out what is making and what is being made.
Yeah, just like you said, so you have to identify that we're talking about, it's a little confusing because we go with a structure and sound, which is singular and plural, but together it's 2, so it's plural, and therefore it has to be make instead of makes.
And we thought this was just a tricky question because collectively as a group, if you read it really quickly or look at it very quickly, if you're hurrying unnecessarily, it's very easy to lump them together and only look for one solution, both plural or both singular.
And I mean, the English is just so similar between the 2 tests. It's really difficult to find differences. But I have to say, I did learn this tonight, which I was kind of surprised. I'm extremely tired. And actually, on the 25, with the not being acceptable, I always thought to myself, how can you not see that not? But sure enough, I just went straight to thinking, oh, I know what they're looking for here, and went straight to the answer. And so I actually learned something on how people do that. So that was good.
And then, so I guess also, so I just covered the make versus makes. And then pronoun refers to the nominal language, which is singular, and therefore it has to make it.
The it being singular.
Right, the it being singular, make the plural of structure and sounds.
And so for the difference between tutoring and teaching as a group, obviously tutoring, you're always going to get that chance to pick up on the student's learning style. So some students in the English or the writing language section are going to like the technical discussion, like especially if they tend to be math people, you can remind them of, okay, we're looking at singular, plural, or this or that, and or antecedent. You know, you can get as technical as you want. Past perfect participle, if they want to remember those terms. But when you're teaching a class, you never want to write off the technical side. Because some students gravitate towards that, but you also don't want to get mired down in that. So it's good to just say, hey, this is an example of, you know, you're conjugating with plural. I guess they would be, where structure and sound would be the subjects of the sentence. No, I don't know. They're the thing doing the verb.
Subject of the clause.
Right, yeah, exactly. So you can go into that technical, and it's good to touch on, but then you just have to say, then if that's not quite your style, what sounds decent? And go back to kind of the more general, and give everyone their opportunity to have their learning style or their problem-solving style shine through. And it can be really challenging on some questions.
No, I think it's all great points, and it's why, Garrett, I really liked your analogy to math of saying we have variables, because you can get as technical as you want with that and go that this is a verb, what's the subject, this is a pronoun, what's the antecedent, or you can just note that we have two sides and we have to think about both of them. And this is a more complex English question. I think if we're thinking about differences between this and the SAT, I think this is easier than what you'd see on the SAT. Or harder than what you'd see on the SAT. I don't think the SAT gets this complex. Sorry. So many S's and A's. And so this is, because it's got those two levels, the makes and the it and the make and the Navajo language and the sons. You got a lot of pieces here, but I liked your breakdown of that. And definitely the more you can break it down, people like that. And you can break it down in ways that are just about hearing or about the technicality. So, very good. Round of applause for group 2. And group 3, Eric and company. We got our math elites here, right?
Yeah. Been in a math group twice. I'm not complaining. So we chose question number 54 again because we found two different ways to approach it really, and basically the way the majority of us went about going for it was like trying to break it down into sides and then dealing with foiling. So for example, if you look, at so basically you have to read the problem statement first, and what they're going to tell you is that the sides of the L are both X, and that the sides of the S's are both Y's, and that the sides of the R's are X and Y respectively. So the way we originally thought about it was that if you're looking down the left side of the square, you're going to be getting two L's. Like, here's a box here. That's a really bad box. L, L. So this together would give you 2X, and then down here you're looking at 3 R's. That's a really bad box. And that's going to give you 3 Y's. And then you do the same thing going across the top. And if you do the same thing going across the top, you get X plus 5Y. And then from there you have to FOIL. Oh, these do smell like blueberries. And foiling is something that we basically realized that we wasted our time with because of what Peter came up with.
So the other concept, one thing we said is that you look at the diagram here and it's kind of like, what am I looking at? It doesn't really make sense. But what it does allow you to do is you say, okay, well I just have to add, I can either get the area of the whole figure, which is the way that we do here to get the FOIL, or I can add up the areas of the separate figures. And that's something that the picture can point you towards, but it doesn't necessarily help you do. It can kind of be confusing, so it's a double-edged sword, that diagram really. But if you do it that way, you know that the areas of the L's are x squared, the areas of the S's are y squared, and the areas of the R's are xy's. So then it's just a simple matter of putting the coefficients with the variables, and you get 2x squared plus 13xy equals 15y squared, excuse me. And then Maddie had another way that if you were doing it that way, that you can kind of simplify it.
Yeah, so I was saying that you look at it and you know your L's have an area of x squared, you know your R's are x by y, and you know your S's are y squared. So you just kind of go through process of elimination and you can automatically cross out F, G, and H because those don't have those terms in them. And then you look at J and K, and the only difference is the coefficient on your XY term, and you know that's your R's. So then you just go through and count your R's, and you get 13, so your answer is K.
And that elimination too can help if you're doing the FOIL method as well, because you can look at, you only have to define some variables.
Awesome. I love all of this. Those are all great methods. And one of the commonalities I noticed among everything they just said is none of you said go to the answers first. And that's great, because I think on math, that's an easy, it's true on all of them, but that's an easy way to get tripped up. You're starting with your own original thought, using the answers in Maddie's method, which is a great method, but then not letting it dictate where your thoughts go. And I think that's really important on math. And this is a classic Final 10 ACT math question where it looks complex on the surface. You take a breath, get into a Zen state, calm down, and there's nothing too difficult arithmetically about it, right?
And I think it's a kind of an SAT type question in that way too, because if you take a second and look at it and don't get confused by all the verbiage and all the diagram going on, you can sort of say, oh, it's pretty simple.
Awesome. Well, good job, Group 3.
I like the order in which you presented it, which was sort of the evolution, I think, for newer instructors. As you get more and more familiar with individual questions, your thinking will evolve. Because we started with a correct approach, a formal approach. That was fine, that was good, that would work. And then we kind of evolved to a slightly more, in terms of conceptual approach, and then kind of got to like a pure test prep approach, which is how do you take all the thought, coalesce it, and that's, I think, what you tend to discover the more experience you have with this, that's sort of the natural order of how you solve these problems.
And the other thing too, touching on the tutoring versus teaching thing, if you have somebody that's real technical math, some people that are real technical math think sort of algorithmically and like, I need a process, I do the process, I can find it. They might really just give me the two sides and I can do FOIL, that's easy. Sometimes if you have people that are more verbal, visualizing things can actually be an easier way of going about it. So that second scenario might actually be an easier way for them to do it, even if it is sort of maybe a secondary first, depending on how they think tutor-wise. You might be able to just jump straight to that.
All right, awesome. So let's get Group 4 up here. You already applauded for them. Oh. Russ just giving out free applause here. You gotta work for it.
One per custom.
Yeah. All right, you guys had science. Everyone's favorite section, the science section. That's what I always tell my students because it's no one's favorite. I actually met a student in Denver. Science was her favorite section. First time. Amazing. Anyway, you guys go ahead. Take it away.
So, to let you know why science is so exciting, the passage was talking about tape. And the experiment was, if we pull on tape hard enough, when will it unstick to the thing it's stuck to? So, I don't know who doesn't find that exciting. But, it's, again, listed out in one of those, here's the data, here's an actual illustration of how they did it, which was the best part, honestly. But then, we started going through, what we did first, we just answered everything, did it our own way, and then kind of came together, made sure we all agreed on what the answers were. There was one that stumped us, but the one we decided to focus most on was 24. And reason why.
Right, so we decided to do 24 because it's one of those there's these questions that looks really hard at first, but really you're just going back to the data, referencing multiple sections of it, and then turning that into an answer.
And so the thing to also remember is that the last few problems on every passage are going to be harder. So just be aware of that. This is an inference question. So in a private tutoring setting, I think what I would ask the student, what I tend to ask the student is, what was your answer and why? And so as they explain how they got to their answer, regardless of whether it was right or wrong, I'm actually seeing their thought process. So if they miss it, then I am seeing the steps that they took, maybe so far so good,
And then right here is where they mixed up the numbers and went off in a different direction. So that tells me at this point, that's when they started to go off in the wrong direction. For example, if they looked at the plastic wrapping chart for the number that they just gave for paper instead of plastic, they'll think that Y might look like a good option. So they could potentially get things backwards. At that point, I would say slow down, you need to be thinking through the question a little bit more. It tends to be that people are going too fast. The science is tough because it does tend to be one that people are short on time with. But typically it's slow down, make sure you're reading the question correctly. However, in an instruction setting, I don't really have time to talk directly to a single student and have them explain their thought process for a single problem. So at that point, I might say, be careful, if you get the numbers backwards here, you're going to think that G, brand Y only, is an option, when in fact, it's brand X only.
Another thing you can do too is you can definitely use process of elimination on some of these. So some of us actually tackle it differently. So one of them actually looked at brand Y and found out, okay, Y is definitely not good. And so if you go that way, you should be able to eliminate both G and J. I went a different direction and looked whether brand X would be a valid choice, and it was. And so I know it has to be either F or H. So either way, either of those methods, you can eliminate half the answers, and that feels working in the long run.
Awesome, great stuff all around. Michelle, I really like that point at the end because with science, it's always kind of about balancing all the options you're given. And that's what we were all talking about. You have a multitude of options.
At least the two methods that are repeated the most is either go straight for the questions and just hop back to the tables, or read the passage first, get some context, and then answer questions. Because then you might get surprised why they're talking about tape in the first place. Now I get it.
All right. Well, you guys are much more exciting than tape. So, round of applause for group 4.
A couple, quick thoughts. One point that probably everyone recognizes, but sometimes would be helpful for the students who are more verbally oriented, is that although analogies are gone from the SAT, we can say inference is to reading as extrapolation, interpolation is to science. It's essentially the same brain muscle that you're using. The other thing I've kind of taken to with students to try to help them understand sort of the difference between the simpler questions, not all easy, and the more difficult science statistically is the difference, on the first 3, 4, sometimes 5 questions of a passage, you're a hunter-gatherer, really just finding information. But on that last 1 or 2 questions is when you have to think. And that tends to be where the go right to the questions falls apart, unless you're able to gather enough information from having done the questions to be able to conceptualize what's happening on those more difficult problems.
All right, so group 5, you come up here, please. All right, we don't have a ton of time, so we'll kind of race through this. One thing I want to note, the prompt you've been given is in the style of a new writing prompt. I found this online. We actually have run out of new writing prompts. You've seen all of them because it hasn't been administered that much. This is not an actual ACT one, but it's really close. And so good enough for our purposes tonight. I wouldn't maybe give it to students, but that makes it sound like I don't like you guys as much as students. That's not what I mean. All right, what did you think of this essay prompt?
All right, so we talked about, first off, the major difference between what we just talked about in the SATs. This time it's all about what you can bring to the table. So it's going to be important to, again, tell them to develop their own position. The other thing, people that don't read carefully are really likely to just pick a perspective they like and write all about that. But it explicitly states you need to address all the perspectives, you need to do them equally. And then kind of a logical way to organize that is one paragraph per perspective. But also, sometimes there's a tendency to, if you do them in order, you might be jumping back and forth with ideas, which is really ideally what you want to do is establish your own position and relate it in a logical way to those positions. The easiest way I've come up with to do that is generally you're going to either disagree with 2 and agree with 1, or agree with 2 and disagree with 1. That's just kind of the logical conclusion of how they normally play out. So I group the 2 that I have a common opinion about together, and then in the third paragraph I use it as a qualifying paragraph, just so you're not jumping back and forth between ideas. And as far as developing your argument,
So we talked about a good way to teach this. I think really whether you're teaching it in a class or individually, is to just go with each perspective. Since we want to analyze each perspective, then that means we need evidence for each perspective. So just start off brainstorming evidence. So if you're in a class, you could just have people call out and write down, okay, so evidence for perspective 1. With increased ease of access to information, we lose the incentive to gain knowledge ourselves. And just like, what's evidence for that? Google. Okay, what about Google? You know, just come up with a list of things that you can specifically refer to, so you're not just being like, on the one hand, information is good, on the other hand, it's kind of bad. To get, yeah. I imagine that's 90% of what these people are reading, so if you can get them to come up with some evidence, that's going to help.
A common mistake that I see is people like to directly quote perspectives. They try to use it like, we're so trained to take direct in-text citations, and I don't think there's anything on here that you should be quoting. So just tell them the perspectives are only for them to agree or disagree with. It's not information that they've provided to you. That's what you have to bring to the table.
Right, you have to reference them and maybe paraphrase them, but yeah, it would be wasting your space to quote and like type it out. Yeah.
And a way to come up with a thesis statement also, maybe once you've brainstormed, is just consider it a fourth perspective. You've got these 3 boxes, and now you're going to write a 4th box. And it could just be paraphrasing one of the other perspectives, if you're going to agree with it, or it could be just saying whatever you want to say, but that's your thesis now.
So David, is what you're telling us, think outside the box?
Into your own.
I think that's an inspiring note to end this one on, so thank you, Group 5. I know, I'm sorry. All right, so thanks to all of you. As you can tell, I'm not one for sincerity, but I am humbled and inspired by everyone in this room. And the teachers I've known for a long time continue to do great, but particularly just to the new people in the room, because we've got a lot. I'm so happy to see you here after maybe a couple months since we interviewed you, or I trained you, or even, Garrett, in your case, 1 week, and just rising to the plate already so clearly and improving so rapidly, and I love that. So I wish we could do this more, because I'm getting a lot of ideas. I hope you guys are getting a lot of ideas. It really is very valuable. So a couple of final things, a couple of final logistics with Susan. So Susan, if you want to come up here and talk about, we've got 2 last little things, and you have 10 minutes. Awesome.
Okay, so as we get into the spring, just a couple of last pieces. Just want to remind you that, like little satellites, want to keep you communicating with home base. Actually, from our perspective, it looks like this with all you guys. But as you're going about your tutoring and teaching assignments, make sure when you're tutoring students and you feel they are not making the progress that you expect, get in contact with us. That would be something if you have a student who's, I don't know, you sort of feel like they're just not going to be, I don't know, just not making progress. They've only signed up for 4 sessions, and you really think where they need to be, they're going to need more sessions to be able to get where they need to go. That's something that you can let us know, and we can make that phone call to the family because it may not be enough for that student. When teaching a class and you have a student who falls at either end of the spectrum, really high or really low, and their needs aren't being met in that class, that would be something also that you can let us know and communicate, and then we can follow up with that family as well. So just a little reminder about that. We would just ask you to put notes in the student's file. Remember that these are the internal notes and not the notes to the parent. They're pretty clearly distinguished, but they're not going out to the parent. These would just be notes that we all in parent education can see. And, of course, contact us so that we can follow up with the parent. And then lastly, just a quick refresher course on timesheets. I understand there have been some questions, and then with, of course, our new scheduling, just wanted to go over with you a little bit about that. So here is our timesheet, and just wanted to go over those categories once again with you. What counts as training is attending in-person trainings like this one. Prepping tests, we pay for up to 3 hours for the ACT or the new SAT. Preparing for class or tutoring sessions will also be in that training category. And those trainings are paid at $10 an hour, blanket across the board. Tutoring and class time, of course, you're tutoring students, teaching classes, arriving 15 minutes early, as we ask you to do, to be ready to greet those students on time and not rushing in at the last second. Cleaning up a classroom after a class, getting that trash put away, just making sure the room is nice because it's all shared space. And that is paid at your tutoring rate. And then that miscellaneous category, communicating with parents, making those introductory phone calls. Hi, I'm Eric, I'm with College Drive, I'll be your student's tutor, it's nice to meet you, and so-and-so. Scheduling those sessions, as we spoke with you about earlier this evening, writing those internal notes that you may have, writing notes to parents, your tutor parent notes, and those are paid at your tutoring rate. Just also something about the timesheet, that second page. Most of you are doing this, but just making sure that you're completing that. Your sessions completed this pay period. You have your student name, the location you're tutoring, the sessions you completed this pay period, the sessions remaining. So if you have a student who has 6 sessions in their program, you've done 3 with them this pay period, you have 3 remaining. Did you do your parent-tutor notes set for the sessions? Are there any internal notes that you've done for the sessions? And do the sessions match in a database in your calendar? This is really important, okay? It's meant to be kind of a reminder for yourself, but it's also really, really important for us in that last column especially. You can't just go yes, 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 because we have been finding that sometimes those sessions aren't marked complete, and now especially when we're asking you to schedule those sessions and put it in the database, it's a record, and we go back and we look at that, and sometimes conversations come up with parents and we have to go back and look at when those sessions were and those kinds of things. It's really important that we keep our I's dotted and our T's crossed, and it's really relying on you to do that. And so, just take that time, make sure that that we're doing our housekeeping the way we should, and just that checklist with your timesheet is kind of meant to be that reminder for you before you turn that in, that all of your students are, everything's good to go with that database with your students. Okay. What questions do you have about timesheets? Yes, Carson.
I got a question. Can we get paid for all 4 of the SAT tests in this book? And when would we want to be prepped for that? By March?
Yes, of course you can get paid for prepping. Yeah. We
We
want you prepped.
We should expect to see SAT students more regularly around March? Or
What we're, I think this year, the way the state, giving us that last hour reprieve on switching over, I think we'll see some bump in SAT students. I don't think we'll see a huge one. We're going to schedule a class. We're not scheduling classes for the March test date, but we are going to schedule about a half dozen classes system-wide. I can't remember if the split is even between the May 7th date and the June 4th date. So mostly what's that? I don't know what that means.
4 for the March, 2 for the
4 for May and 2 for June. Okay. So we got one like in Evergreen. Morrison has one. Westminster has one. I think Louisville has one. Don't know that if we have one out in Aurora or Greenville. But most, so I would say it's probably not. Jonathan, really your call on timing of preparation.
Yeah.
And I guess as we start getting calls, we'll get a sense of how much.
And at first, like anything, it'll go to me, it'll go to Ben, just as we're piloting things and the first student, second student. But obviously, once it becomes a broader demand, then it goes to you guys. And I would say March is a good date to keep in mind, because I think that's when the calls will start coming in. depending on how many there are.
Yeah, I mean, some of it going through for the first time, but I would say, yeah, as we start to get into spring, getting prepped and ready, I think also expectation that summer will be a good transition period as well. I think we'll have a much busier summer than we typically have.
And then just, of course, going to next year when we expect a large switch over to the SAT, with all juniors taking the SAT test.
So quick question on that now, is it all the colleges still gonna take the ACT or just the state of Colorado paying for the SAT in the class, or other states changing?
So it really is just I guess economics, there's oligopoly, right? There's ACT and there's the College Board. There are two companies vying for attention. It's just business. And if you think about it, $30 a test, 60,000 some odd test takers, that's a $2 million annual contract, 5-year contract, $10 million contract that College Board just swooped in and took away from ACT because the ACT was kind of asleep.
So the colleges don't care at all?
Colleges, it's
Colleges still
unchanged,
don't
no
care.
change at all. So it's
Yeah.
odd in Colorado, which has always been, two things are odd. One, for 15 years, as a mandated test, the state has been collecting longitudinal data on its schools, and they were willing to let go of that because of the preference for the new test. But for colleges, it's odd because Colorado's always been more of an ACT state, and now all their students will be applying with SAT scores. But I have to point out to you, and I know people always want to fight me on this, but the notion that schools prefer one test over the other has no longer been operative for a while. Only in very rare cases will a school, typically in the case of athletes, will a school say, hey, we want an SAT. And that's typically what it would be. You want to go to an Ivy League, you're going to play soccer at an Ivy League school, they're not sure you're academically qualified, they would typically ask for an SAT score. But that's really about the only time that happens. So in Colorado, it'll still be, I don't know what'll happen. But we think what'll happen is, I think Jonathan and I agree on this, that currently 60,000 students take the ACT, 60,000 juniors take the ACT every year, and about 6,500 students have taken the SAT. Once it flips, you'll have 60,000 taking the SAT. I would anticipate about 20,000 taking the ACT just because that's what the parents took in Colorado, that's the muscle memory, that's just the way college admissions people kind of think about it. Maybe less at DU or Colorado College, but more at CU and Hines and the state schools as well. But that's kind of a guess. I don't know for sure what's
And either way, everyone in this room is at a great advantage because you all know the ACT really well, and you're learning the SAT, so those skills will still be applicable, and there are new skills to be applied. And I think it's kind of exciting. And I think Ben does too.
Yeah, and I would say the test prep purists kind of lean toward the SAT because it has more of the critical thinking type approach to it. Some of you may disagree and talk about it. You can make a principled case for why the ACT. The tests are clearly getting more similar. The SAT is still talking in terms of it being a critical thinking exam, even as they've moved the test to be much more like the ACT. Maybe that's a principled argument. Maybe it's because they just think it makes good sense for them to do that, to make the argument. So it's all, the business side of it, which I'm thrilled to talk about over drinks, but goes beyond the scope of this meeting. But catch me at some time and I will bend your ear about all of the business side of everything.
Wait, before you go, nobody can leave yet. Carolyn, wait.
Oh, nicely done. Top of the door.
There is an exit ticket. Okay, when you came in, there was a survey that was kind of an update about your availability, about what subjects you feel comfortable tutoring academically. I know some of you started it. I don't know, some of you might have finished it. But before you go tonight, I want to. You can't leave the room without handing Marilyn that sheet of paper. And then I think if you go out that door. And I guess we are otherwise finished.
Yeah, well, I'm going to give Jonathan the final word, so I'll take the penultimate words, I believe
Okay,
is
the penultimate words, and then the ultimate words.
Okay, that sounds good. So, a couple final thoughts. First, I want to thank Jonathan for putting together really a terrific unbelievable job. But the logistics of the business are key too. So without Susan, without Sam, obviously it doesn't happen either as well. So thanks to them for all of the maybe it's less exciting to talk about all of the other pieces for how to get scheduled, how to get paid, or how to get paid is generally pretty good. But as well, we're going into the season with the best team we've ever had. I think we have an absolutely awesome group, both from a home office, from a management standpoint, and from a teaching standpoint. We are awesome. I know we're going to have a great year. I know the business will continue to thrive, so I thank you in advance for all the awesome teaching and tutoring you will do in this cycle. And just one other thing, I've taken to this. I mentioned we had our company annual meeting yesterday. I mentioned this as well. I've taken to when I teach students, teach a class now. I don't know where I picked it up. I think I stole it from someone, but I've taken to thanking my class at the end of each session for the opportunity to teach them, because I think it is about the highest quality you can have. So literally, the class I teach now, thank you for letting me be your teacher, because I think it's an honor to be in that role, and I get to learn a lot as well. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to learn from you this evening, and I encourage you to do the same and think about your tutoring and teaching engagements in the same way as well. So I'm not suggesting that one has to thank their students when they do it, but you might want to think about doing it, or at least make the mental note of it. And Jonathan, I turn it over to you.
They have soccer at Ivy League schools?
Yeah, pretty darn good.
All right, no, I don't have anything more to add than that. So I was just going to say, please remember to bring your blue books with you, your folders. That's all. They're our gifts, I guess, to you. You can view them as a gift if you want. And thank you all. I echo everything Ben just said.